Mr. Curtin, roll call.
Andy Bacon.
Here.
Dave Huntoon.
Here.
Tom Heaney.
Here.
Owen Gambrell.
Here.
Jim Miller.
Here.
Eric Curtin here. Chris Souza.
Here.
And Tom Silvera.
Yep.
First order of business is adoption of the minutes from April 23rd, 2019.
Motion to adopt said minutes for April 23rd.
Second.
Made and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. Next order of business is a summary hearing. Summary hearings are hearings that have very minimal relief, and how we deal with it is we'll read it in the record. If there's anyone here that wants to object to it or speak against it, we'll put it to the end of the calendar for a full hearing. Mr. Curtin, could you read that?
Sure. The petition of Daniel Donovan for variance from section 603, 701, and 803 to allow the construction of an 18 by 18 addition to the rear of the detached garage with a right yard setback of 12 feet where 20 feet is required. Said real estate is located at 608 Aquidneck Avenue, further identified as lot 111 on plat 114.
Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak against the petition? Seeing none, we're going to keep it as a summary petition. Do I have a motion to adopt?
Make a motion to adopt.
Motion made. Do I have a second?
Second.
Made and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0.
Petition of John Gullison by his attorney, Jeremiah Lynch.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, we're going to run through the list because there are several items that are going to be continued this evening, some withdrawn, so that folks who may be here, they don't sit around all night waiting to find out
So
the
we can,
case.
do you want to run the whole list, or
Yes.
should we
Yes.
just deal with this one now?
I would go through the whole list, but you don't need to read them all into the record,
No,
just
but just the,
identify the petitions.
so
We're
this
going to
one,
continue.
this one's going to be continued, right?
Yes.
So I have a letter from the attorney, Jay Lynch, asking to continue this to the August meeting. Next petition,
Yeah, what's the date on that, Mr. Chairman?
August 27th, 2019.
That's both petitions.
That's
That's
both
both.
petitions, yeah. Petition of Atlantic Beach Suites LLC by their attorney David Martland.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, there's a letter in the file from an attorney who represents some folks who are opposed to that petition. Both parties have agreed to a continuance to the next regular hearing date,
Okay, which is
June the 25th.
continued to June 25th.
Petition of Brian and Anna Donovan for a variance from section 603, 70, and 701 to allow the construction of a three-story, single-family dwelling. This is with a right yard setback of 5 feet and a left yard setback of 6 feet, where 15 feet is required.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
You don't need to read it into the record. We're just
Yeah.
doing sort of a roll
Just the
here.
first one.
That petition, as well as the next one, the Donovan petition, will be heard this evening.
Okay. That'll be our first full hearing.
Okay. Petition of Esplanade Realty Trust by their attorney Gerard Galvin.
They're present, I believe, ready to go forward this evening.
Okay, that'll be our second full hearing.
It's third.
Second full.
Petition of SKN Associates LLC by their attorney Sean Bouchard for variance.
Right.
Yep, they're going forward.
No, that's fine. There's two petitions, you said.
For both of those.
Yep.
An appeal of Lori Abrams by our attorney Joseph Hook.
That's
right.
You ready to go forward tonight, Mr. Hook?
Yes, we are.
Okay, that'll be our fourth.
Here for the one D information.
I think we missed one.
No, we're good.
On the flip page.
That's part of it.
1 and 2 in the same.
Yes. Okay.
Petition of Leanne Pantalones for a variance.
It's actually two petitions, special use permit and a variance, and I believe they're here, prepared to go forward.
Okay, that'll be our, both those will be our fifth hearing.
Petition of B&L Hogan Associates by their attorney, Robert Silva.
Ready to proceed. Mr. Chairman.
6.
Petition of Olin and Jane Gambrell and Flat Waves.
Mr. Chairman, that matter may actually be withdrawn.
Okay. We do that now, Mr. Kane?
If you'd like.
Can I have a motion to, without prejudice, can I have a motion to withdraw that application without prejudice?
Motion to withdraw that application without prejudice.
I have to accuse myself on that petition.
Okay.
I'll second.
Dave Hontoon, you're voting on that one? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. Withdrawn without prejudice.
Petition of David and Mary Rodericks and Jack and Diane Lopes for a variance.
They're present.
That'll be number 7.
Petition of Konstantinos Masadas and Marco Minari for a special use permit.
Okay, that'll be number 8.
Petition of Wayne and Adrian Domier for a variance.
Okay. Number 9.
Apologize if I'm butchering these names.
That'll be number 9.
Petition of Chris and Jill Matthews for a special use permit.
Number 10.
Petition of K&K Beach Club by their attorney David Martland.
The applicant has requested a continuance to the next regular hearing, which would be June 25th.
Continue to June 25th.
Petition of Robert Grockhart and Waiha Liam by their attorney Sean Bouchard.
I'd ask that matter be continued to the next regular scheduled meeting.
Okay, that'll be continued June 25th.
Petition of Ocean State Transit and Sam Jewell Enterprises LLC for special use permit.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, the owner of the property has requested that that petition be withdrawn. They technically had not given full permission to the tenant, who was the applicant, to move forward. So there's a letter from the trustee of the property asking that it be withdrawn.
We need a motion on that, Judge?
Yes.
I'll motion to withdraw the.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0.
Petition of ELE Trust and Keystone Novelties for a special use permit.
They're here. I believe they're ready to go forward.
Okay. Thank you for your patience. If we could start with petition of,
Sure.
yeah,
It's a petition of Brian and Anna Donovan for a variance from section 603, 701 to allow the construction of a 3-story single-family dwelling with a right yard setback of 5 feet and a left yard setback of 6 feet where 15 feet is required. And a front yard setback of 7 feet where 25 feet is required. And a lot coverage of 35% where 25% is allowed. Said real estate is located at Tuckerman Avenue, further identified as lot 107, tax assessor plat 160.
I gotta recuse myself from this one.
okay. Mr. Souza's recusing. Mr. Antoon, you'll be voting on this one?
Yep.
Should we read the second petition, Mr. B? Go ahead, read.
Yeah, we're proceeding on the amended petition, please.
The second is to the amended petition of Maureen Donovan, Brian and Anna Donovan by their attorney Chris Beam for variance from section 603 and 701 to allow the construction of a 3-story single-family dwelling with a south or left yard setback of 4 feet and a north or right yard setback of 14 feet, where 15 feet is required, a front yard setback of 7 feet, where 25 feet is required, a lot coverage of 33.9%, where 25% is allowed. Said real estate is located at 0 Tuckerman Avenue and further identified as lot 107 on plat 160.
Good evening, Mr. Bean.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Christopher Bean for the petitioners Brian and Anna Donovan. As you heard, this is a lot of land on Tuckerman Avenue. It's lot 107, assessors plat 116 northeast. My clients want to build a single-family home on the property, which will be their full-time residence for them and their children. You can see from the site plan, this is a lot with 4,873 square feet in a R10 district, and it's only 50 feet wide, and the required setbacks are 15 feet on each side, so you can see that the setbacks take up a majority of the width of the property, 30 feet out of the 50 feet. So I think we'll be able to show tonight that anyone who wants to build a modern, reasonably sized home is going to need relief to do so. We are looking for a side yard setback to the south to allow 4 feet instead of 15 feet, and the neighbor to the south is actually here and does not object to that. On the north side, even though the petition said we're looking for a variance, we don't need relief because we have 14 feet, and the code allows, because it's counting a foot of the overhang on that, it actually gives us the 15 feet that we need on the north side. We will need a lot coverage variance. We have 33.9% lot coverage. However, the overhangs from the house, which need to be included in that computation, if they weren't, we would only have 30.5 square feet, 30.5 percentage lot coverage based on the footprint of the building. And then the front yard, we're asking for a 7-foot setback when 25 feet is required. However, I believe, if you recall from other petitions on Tuckerman Avenue, in this area there is a 20-foot right-of-way, so the actual home is going to be anywhere from, I believe, 27 feet at its closest point to 32 feet or so from Aquidneck Avenue, the actual street. So there are no special amenities in this house. Hopefully you'll see that there are reasonable plans for a growing family. This Donovan family has been part of this neighborhood since 1983. The mother owns a home on the Esplanade right in back of this lot, and he also has a brother who owns a home on Tuckerman Avenue, so they've been invested in the neighborhood for some time. So I only have 2 witnesses, Mr. Brian Donovan and also Jim Hull, so if I can, I would call Brian Donovan, please.
Mr. Donovan, raise your right hand. Do you swear the testimony tonight will be the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
If you can use the microphone, state your name and address for the record.
Ryan Donovan, address
Address.
of 4 Clark Hill Drive, Northeastern Mass.
Okay, thank you.
4 Clark Hill Drive, Northeastern Massachusetts. What's that? Donovan. I mumble a lot, sorry.
Speak clearly right
Try my
into
best.
the microphone there. All right, Brian, you are, with your wife Anna, the petitioners for this amended petition for relief, is that correct?
Yes.
And it is a lot of land on Tuckerman Avenue, is that correct?
Yes.
Presently, it's improved by an old garage,
Yes, correct.
and the lot is actually owned by your mother, is that right?
Yes.
And she's owned the home right behind this lot, what is it, 38 Esplanade in
Correct.
Middletown?
Yep, since 1983.
And she's also owned this lot since 1983?
Yeah, it was purchased at the same time.
All right. So on your lot, we just mentioned that there's a garage on it, an older garage. I think you have a board that you can just show them the existing conditions with the garage. Just hold it up. All right, so the garage is, seen better days, is that correct?
Yeah, it's kind of shabby looking.
And it's
There's
actually.
my mother's house back there.
And to the north, the setback with the garage is only a foot or so, is that correct?
Yeah, the town property line's right about here. It's like 1.5 feet off this point, and on this side, it's like about 3.5 feet, I believe. So technically, this is all that, that Tuckerman Ave byway that the town owns.
Okay, in front, all right. Now, you're building a single-family home for you and your wife, and you have one child now?
No, I have 2 kids
2 children, I'm
and a
sorry.
dog.
Okay, and you intend to live there year-round, is that correct?
That's the plan.
Now, the house that you're going to build, a single-family home, it meets the zoning requirements in height, is that correct?
Correct.
Now, in terms of the setbacks, you're aware that there are required 15-foot setbacks on both sides, is that correct?
Correct.
Now, to the south, what are you proposing as a setback to plans?
4-foot setback from the overhang. It's a 5-foot setback from the actual foundation of the house. Which would be
Okay. And on to the north, what is the setback?
north was 15, the building's 15 feet, with the overhang, the roof's 14 feet.
Now, the lot is, what, 50 feet in width, is that correct?
Correct.
And so the setbacks take up 30 feet of the actual width of the lot, is that correct?
Correct.
But you're going to meet the setbacks to the north, and you're asking for a variance to allow a 4-foot setback to the south, is that correct?
Correct.
And that neighbor is, who owns the property to the south?
On this side?
To the
Yeah, it's
south?
Martha Barassa. She's right there.
And she,
Martha Barassa.
has indicated she does not object to this petition, is that correct?
Correct.
Now, the lot is only 4,873 square feet, is that correct?
Correct.
So you agree that you looked into building a reasonably sized home on the property for you and your family, is that correct?
Correct.
And you believe your plans are reasonable, is that right?
I do.
And knowing that you're going to need some type of relief from the board in order to do that, is that right?
Correct.
Now, what's the frontage? We've already touched base on the frontage in terms of the garage, but the house from your actual property line to the front is going to be how far in terms of a setback?
The building, the actual foundation would be 8 feet, and the roof line would be 7. And that's from the 20-foot Tuckerman Ave byway we were talking about that Middletown owns.
Well, okay, but
So
that's going to be the corner of the house which is closest to your property line, is that right?
Correct.
And does your actual home get further away from the front property line?
You're saying like this corner?
Yes.
Yes, it goes back about another 3.5 feet.
All right, so from your property line, the home is going to be 7 feet to about 10.5 feet from the property line.
Correct.
And then you have the 20-foot right-of-way that's in front of your house. is that
Correct.
right?
Yes.
So your actual distance from your proposed home is going to be 27 feet to 32.5 feet from the actual roadway at Tuckerman Ave.
Yes, I had 28 feet to 31 feet from actual Tuckerman Ave.
Now, the lot coverage is 25% allowed, and you're proposing 33.9%, is that correct?
Correct.
Now, you have roof overhangs along your home, is that right?
Yes.
And how long are the roof overhang?
The roof overhangs are 1 foot all the way around. Originally, we had them bigger, but we cut those down.
All right. So if you just looked at the footprint of your home itself without the overhangs, the actual lot coverage would be.
30.5%.
Now, how many bedrooms is this home going to have?
4 bedrooms.
Okay, is
One
one of
will
them?
be kind of like an office and room for my mother, because she'll probably end up living with us eventually.
All right, now the footprint is 1,486 feet, is that correct?
I'm sorry?
The footprint of the home is 1,486 feet?
Correct.
All right, and your living area is 2,600?
Correct. 2684.
And doesn't have any other special amenities or anything
No,
of that?
no
is that
movie
correct?
theater, no bar, no pool room. It's literally just kitchen, family room, bedrooms, bathrooms,
Now, again, you're gonna live there full-time, is that correct?
full-time.
And you guys have been coming to Middletown since, what, 1983?
Yeah, ever since I was born. Before I was born, I was here. I worked here every single summer since I was 12.
And your brother owns a house also on Tuckerman, is that
He
correct?
does. He bought a house in Tuckerman 3 years ago, I believe.
All right, now, what do you do for work? You a landscaper?
Yeah, no, I own a landscape company. We're originally based out of Massachusetts. We've been doing trimming hedges down here for 15 years. And last year, we opened up full service, do lawn mowing, the full works now. And it was wildly successful last year. And that's kind of how this all came about. Decided we want to move down here and continue to grow that.
Okay. Now, in terms of, there was some, in one of the objectors' correspondence, they said something about storing trucks or equipment on this property.
Yeah, that's not true.
And you've never stored any of
No.
your landscaping equipment or trucks or anything like that?
Nope, I drive a personal truck. It's an F-350 with 4 doors. It's a large truck, but that's my personal truck.
And I think there was also something about storing a boat.
Yep, I have a boat that I keep at Third Beach, and
And none
the
of
trailer might have been there for a day or two, but that's about it.
it's never been on, so you just wanted to address that?
My mom would not allow that.
Uh, Hold on, you wanted to address that because there
Yep.
was some inaccuracies put in
Yes.
a few of the letters of objection, is that correct?
I think the neighbors are confusing the amount of work we do in the neighborhood. We have 16 accounts just on Esplanade and Tuckerman Ave. We do so much work in the area. They feel like we're always there, and they think like we're parked there, but we're just working.
Now, you're gonna have parking, you have available parking for you and your family there off the street, is that correct?
Correct.
I have nothing further.
Did this come before us, another petition before us?
Yeah, and then,
And we had said it was too close and you were gonna go back and redo
yeah,
it.
amended
And you
it
still ended up with 4 feet away from the boundary with it?
on the south, and then at the, and then it's 15 feet from the other.
The problem with that is maintaining the property when you have 3 floors. That's the problem. 4 feet is very close. And he may not own it forever, he may sell it to someone else, and the neighbor may change, and that's where the problem is. That's where the problem is, 4 feet is, for the 3 stories, is too much. I know it hits the height limit, that I do know, but I brought that up last time, that
Well-
it's too high and too close to the thing. For the height, it's too close to the boundary.
A
The
sci- scissor lift would fit in between there.
What's that?
A scissor lift, that would fit in between.
Yeah, but it's still close to the boundary line. If they have a fence there, it's just close.
So the last time your concerns we had a 5 and 6, we were looking for a 6-foot setback on the other side also, so they reduced the size of the house to have that conforming. And then this, to the south, is only 4 feet, 5 feet actually from the foundation. And the neighbor to the south is here. And I can't speak for her, but I'm not sure if she shares those concerns.
I mean,
No, I
there's,
just
there-
thought that we had brought that up last time, and we had said that we thought it was too high and too close to the boundary line. That's,
The last time I wasn't sure you mentioned height, but you definitely mentioned your concerns about the setbacks.
Would the I don't understand the math surrounding the 27-foot setback. Where is that? The rear yard setback? Is that what you're getting at?
No, Tuckerman Avenue, there's a 20-foot right-of-way in front of the property to Tuckerman Avenue. So, and then the proposed house is also going to be 7 feet off the property line. So that's where you would get 27 feet from Tuckerman. We said 7 feet setback from the property line, 27 actually from the road.
How far is the garage from, using the same math, how far is the garage right now?
21.5 feet from Tuckerman Avenue, 1.5
What
feet
side of
off the
Tuckerman?
property line.
From the dead center of Tuckerman, or?
No, from the beginning of Tuckerman, like the asphalt.
The garage is 21 feet right now?
No, the garage is 1.5 feet off the property line, and if you add the 20-foot right-of-way, along that side of Tuckerman Avenue to the west, there is a 20-foot right-of-way that runs along the road.
So the proposed house is going to be 6 feet farther back than the existing garage?
Yes.
The existing garage basically sits right on top of the road, though, right?
Not on top of the road.
I was there an hour ago. I mean, it's very close.
No.
You got your picture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're saying that garage is a foot from the property line?
1.5.
Yeah.
A foot and a half.
It's like 3.5 feet on this side, 1.5 on this side.
And it'll be a single garage, correct?
Yes.
And with regard to the square footage, so on the first floor, which is the garage level, are you going to have living space on that floor as well?
Yes.
So the 2,600 square feet is 600 or 700 on the first floor, and then
It's, on the first floor, the living space is 792. Then if you add the garage, plus 282 for the garage.
Mr. King, why does the town have a 20-foot right-of-way there?
I don't know, I did not build Tuckerman Avenue.
Okay. Just asking, because we're giving, you know, if we allow this.
There is physically 20 foot of landscape grass
Right.
area
I
from the
know.
edge of pavement. The right of way in each part of the town varies from side to side. It's not, the paved surface is not in the center of the right of way in most instances.
Do the property owners on Tuckerman Avenue get to include that?
No, they're just lucky enough that they have to maintain it.
But you don't allow anybody to encroach in that, they just lease
No,
the
they're not,
20
no,
foot.
their rights end at the property line. They're allowed to get, the excavation permit from DPW to pass their driveway over it is the limit. They're not allowed to utilize it for their own purposes otherwise. Not for fences, if they plant a garden, it's at risk of, it's subject to removal by Public Works at their discretion, if it creates an impediment to foot traffic or whatever.
And that includes parking also, correct? There's no parking?
They are allowed to park on it as long as they're not on the roadway, which is the paved area.
So they are allowed to park?
Yes, on Tuckerman Ave. That's something that the police department has addressed. Tuckerman Avenue is listed under the traffic schedule in the town ordinance as no parking on the roadway, but they do allow parking on the shoulder, provided all four wheels are on the pavement.
Thank you.
how many square footage of deck do you have?
The deck is 928 square feet.
And they're all covered?
They're all covered, correct?
That front being so close to Tuckerman Avenue, is there any reason why that can't be kicked back?
We're trying to, obviously, like you told me, my mother lives in the front on Esplanade. No intentions of getting rid of this. We're trying to preserve as big of a backyard for the kids as possible.
Well,
I
it
mean, if
says
we
here
go
that
another,
you-
I'm sorry.
You have 33.8 feet in the back?
Yeah, so if we went more than 4 feet back, we'd be asking for another variance in the backyard. We're trying to preserve. We have no intention. We've been there forever. We want to be there forever. My sister's probably going to end up getting the mom's house in the front eventually. We're always going to be there. We want to have as big of a joint backyard as possible.
Your rear setback, the rear backyard setback on that,
Required is 30 feet,
30 feet?
yes.
So
So
the
by
most-
not pushing the house back, they're asking for 2 variances instead of 3.
So the most they can kick it back is another 3.8 feet.
Correct.
That would give you
Yeah.
10, almost 11 up front, plus the 20. That would bring you up to 31.
We're, I believe in one of the corners of the house, we are 10 and a half now.
You have a problem
Fathers.
kicking it back to 3 feet?
Right, kick back, kick it to the wife. No, we can kick it back 3 feet.
I'm sorry?
The wife said she has no problem with that. Have to check it with her.
You don't want to be sleeping on the couch.
And we're talking, we're talking about that corner that is 7 feet.
Right.
Yeah,
That would bring that up to 10 and or 30,
10, yeah.
5.
Just curious, how large a home, if you honored every setback, footprint-wise, could you actually put on this piece of property without any variance? Do you know offhand?
Well,
Someone can do the math quick, or if you already have that?
be 20 feet in width,
Right. And then how far back would you go?
and then we'd have to go back 25 feet. I
Is it
think it's
25 to
98
30 or
feet, so 55 feet would take up the front and the back, so it would be 20 feet by about
53, 54.
50.
So 20 by 50. So about 1,000 square
No,
foot.
It would be
Looked like a shoebox.
Right.
20 by 40, because it would be 30 and 25 setbacks. Be more than 35, 20 by 30.
So just round about a 700 square foot floor plan. And if you went up three levels on that one, you're looking at about a 2,100 square foot house maximum,
Yeah.
assuming you weren't going to jam any garage space or something in there. So to adhere to the setbacks for that kind of a property, the max size home you folks or anybody else on a similar sized property could put on there would be 2,100 square feet, give or take a few, just doing some armchair math right now.
The one thing when you bring that up, I didn't bring it up yet, but the town assessment for tax purposes of this lot is $628,200. So to put a shoebox or a funny-looking house on this lot, I don't think there's many people going to do that for that lot. This lot is in many other areas, an R10 lot might be a third of that value, a quarter of that value. So could also make the argument, on a lot like this, you want to make a reasonably sized and reasonable looking house in proportions. I would think that would also be reasonable.
Well, isn't part of the property valuation due to the size of the homes that are in the area that are raising the value of the property itself as well? You know what I mean?
Well, this is a land area.
That's what I'm saying. So the land itself is valued that high because the properties around it, I mean, value is value. It's what people pay for it.
We're gonna have Mr. Hull step up. Actually, he could probably answer that question for you better than I could.
Sure. Yeah.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Hull has, I'll let you get sworn in.
Do you swear the testimony tonight will be the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
State your name and address for the record.
James Houle, Houle, 198 Union Street, Portsmouth, Rhode Island.
Mr. Hull, you've appeared before this board on numerous times in the capacity as a real estate appraiser
I have.
and expert. We will recognize you tonight as that expert.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I have copies of Mr. Hull's report, which I would like to submit as an exhibit.
We'll mark this Exhibit A.
And just for the record, the last few pages are his actual CV.
I hope I made enough copies.
You did.
Okay. Okay.
Mr. Hull, can you just tell the board what services you were engaged by the Donovans to perform here tonight?
Yes, I was asked to review their petition in terms of its conformance to the requirements of the zoning code for the variances they were seeking to construct the house.
And what is your understanding of what are they looking to do in the relief requested?
Well, what they are looking to do is to remove the existing garage on the property, which is built very close to the road, and replace it with a 3-story, single-family home that will contain about 2,684 square feet of finished living area. And they essentially will be looking for relief to move the south property line 4 feet, 5 feet to the foundation where 15 feet is required, and then 7 feet from the front where 25 feet is required. Again, it's 8 feet to the foundation. Now, I reviewed the petition, I looked at the zoning code, I looked at the comp plan, I visited the property, I looked over the neighborhood, and essentially, I feel that the plan, taken as a total package, actually adheres well to the requirements that for the variances they are seeking, which are the relief is from section 603 and 701.
So you mentioned the surrounding neighborhood. You inspected the property, and can you tell the conditions that you noted and found?
Well, it's a very densely developed neighborhood, of course, as we are aware, and that I looked, because the lots generally are very small, they're smaller than average. It's an R10A zone, but most of the lots are not much more than 5,000 or 6,000 square feet in this particular area. When you get when you get to the eastern side of Walcott Avenue, the lots are bigger. On this side, they tend to be very small. This lot is a very typical lot for the area, 4,800 plus square feet. And the properties that have been built there, again, this is an older summer cottage area that is being replaced with a lot of new construction. The question about the value of the property is spot on. In fact, it's very interesting because about a year ago, I actually looked to see, and I found that the Easton Point area, the true Easton Point area, as a neighborhood, is now the most valuable single neighborhood on Aquidneck Island. I couldn't find Bellevue Avenue, the Point section in Newport, nothing. I couldn't find anything that was actually more valuable than Easton's Point.
So the question was about the lot of land, the driving factors for the value of the lot being at least in the town's opinion, $628,200.
Yes, I mean, that's very typical. The lot is small, but it's very typical because most of the houses that are being built, and you'll see later on in my report, are in that 25 to 3,000 square foot range. Even immediately around the subject property, the new houses are getting into that size. The further up, closer to Walcott Avenue, where Mark Horan has built a lot of new houses, those houses are closer to 4,000 and 5,000, 6,000 square feet, selling, $3 million without water frontage. So it is very typical.
Now, just we were discussing the neighborhood, and in your report, you have a picture, if you could, the page.
On page 7 of the report, I thought it was very interesting because number 50 Tuckerman Avenue is now for sale, and in fact, I looked today, and it's actually in contract to purchase, and I have the a listing with me. But they included in the listing an aerial photograph that's taken looking at the back of 52, 50, and 44 Tuckerman, obviously to accentuate the view from those properties. And I took that and I actually looked at these houses, and number 44 and number 50 have been there a couple of years. I think 44 might have been built, they've been there a couple of years, but you can see that in each case I put the lot size and the square footage of the house, and they're actually extremely similar. The subject property, as you can see at the top, has 2,684 square feet on a 48, almost 4,900 square foot lot. The other three that are directly across the street are smaller lots, but the houses are larger. Two of the houses are larger. Number 50 is just marginally smaller. And then 57 Tuckerman is 3,907 square foot house on a 3,920 square foot lot. They built over an existing foundation. They are very close to the sideline all the way around, obviously, because they are taking up so much room. I did confirm the square footages because number 52, at the time that I wrote this, had not even had its final certificate of occupancy. So I confirmed the square footages with George Durgan here in the office of all these houses, and these are the square footage that he's entering now for number 57 and 52 that are not actually online for vision.
Okay. Now, looking at the criteria the board needs to address in taking up whether to grant the variances that have been requested, I'm going to ask you some questions. Is there hardship the applicant seeks relief from due to the unique characteristics of the lot?
It is. It's the size of the lot. You know, it was interesting that Mr. Hooton brought up, Huntoon brought up the question about the size of the house that could be built on the lot, because when you're in an R10 zone, I've done a fair amount of study on it, and I found that anything much below 7,500 square feet begins to develop a hardship when you're trying to fit a house that is reasonably sized. And in the report I mentioned, actually on this number one criterion, that nationally of new house, the median new house is 2,632 square feet. This house is 2,684 square feet, so this is what an average new house is in the United States. This is not an outrageously sized house at all. It's right in the middle. I didn't, you know, they don't list that's the interesting thing, they don't list it because there are so many places where zoning varies so dramatically. You know, you get into a lot of parts of the country, they simply don't have zoning at all, and then they have others that use very different things where Montana builds their houses very, very close together within only a couple of feet each other, and then they use an alleyway in the back of the house as an access that runs all the way through the backyards of everybody, so that's where all garbage collection goes. That's where everything happens when you're doing work. You have to go down that because you can't even fit between the houses. So they don't talk about it because the zoning is so widely varied, do you know? For our area where we have the setbacks that we have, where we have what I think is a sort of a very suburban R10 zoning, but you're in almost urban lots at 5,000, less than 5,000 square feet, I think you need that kind of relief. It becomes a hardship just by the size of the lot.
So is the hardship the result of any prior action of the Donovans?
No, the lot has been that configured for years, configured in that way for years.
And Will the granting of the variance alter the general character of the surrounding area?
No, not at all. On page 5, I have shaded the area, the plat map that I actually looked at houses. And on page 6, I looked at each of the lots and their square footage and the lot coverage, the square footage of the footprint. And what it, basically, you know, you can see the lot coverage varies from a low up to of about 15 up to a high of about 45%. There were 34 lots surveyed, 4 were vacant, so they were not included on my chart. 18 of the 30 actually exceeded lot coverage, which is 53% of the lots. The average lot coverage for the area is 27.37, and the average coverage for lots that have less than 7,000 square feet is 29.12. So it's very much, the idea that they are in the low 30s is very much within that range of up to 45 and close to the average for the area.
Okay, will the granting of the variance impair the intent and purpose of the zoning code or comprehensive?
No, the code calls for this type of a variance, understanding that it's going to be, the comp plan calls for this kind of a variance and puts it in, it's in the code for that reason. So it will not, I believe it is very much in keeping, and it's the least relief necessary.
All right, so will the hardship petitioners face if the relief is not granted amount to more than a mere inconvenience?
Yes, I believe it would.
I have nothing further.
Any questions for Mr. Wolf?
Thank you.
I have no
Sir,
further witnesses.
Before you guys wait, you have a,
Sorry.
no problem. You listed 66 Esplanade, and then you have a photo.
Oh, yeah, you know when
What's the purpose of that?
Right. When I was looking at the conformance to the neighborhood before I found this absolutely perfect photograph of the houses that were directly across the street, I was looking for houses that were 3 stories that were very large. I noticed 66 Esplanade, it's a full 3 stories of construction, and it is, according to my calculations, is 27% lot coverage. And it has an actually much bigger lot. It is at 6,500. So I was just looking for very similar houses. This just happens to be one that I found that, you know, was right up to the top of the height and the coverage.
How wide is that house?
You know, I'll be honest with you, I don't know, but I'm assuming that it's right at the 30-foot level, yeah. 35, sorry, the 35-foot height.
And it is by your choice to have 900 square feet of deck space, right? That I feel like you're minimizing the lot coverage issue by using 900 square feet of deck space. Can you speak to that? What I'm getting at is mass. It doesn't shrink the mass of the overall building, and it's all covered decks and 900 additional square feet that you're trying to back out of your numbers to make them in line with what your statistics say. You know, if the reality is this would be, from a lot coverage perspective, the 3rd highest lot coverage in every single one of these comparables that you're using. And I find it that you're just trying to use convenient math to make your argument.
Well, you know, if you're asking me to comment on the 900 square feet of deck, I think that, you know, I'm not an architect, I don't pretend to be one, but a lot of the times that when you're designing a house, you don't want to just, one of the things that I noticed with these houses who are directly across the street, the view of a lot of these houses is that they are just boxes because they were trying to eliminate decks. One of the things about decks is it provides a really strong visual balance to a house when you're doing it. It goes beyond just the need to actually sit outside. you know, that it actually is sort of important for the integrity of the architecture when you're designing it. And you know, you can vary it, and that's why I said when you look at the overall package of what's being presented, I think that there are, you know, you can pick on various points of it. I don't disagree with the 4 feet, but at the same token, there are a lot of houses in the neighborhood that have that. You know, I don't argue that you could reduce the size of the deck, but you know, a lot of this is within the total framework of a well-designed, average-sized kind of house, and I don't see it as being totally unreasonable.
But is it the least relief necessary? That's,
Well,
that's what I'm struggling with.
Okay.
I mean, you're at 34.6 feet of height, and you're asking for 35% lot coverage, and you're asking for a 4-foot setback on the side. So is this the least relief necessary is what I'm getting?
It's not 30, well,
34.6 is what
30.
No, it's been reduced. They took about 200 square feet off of the footprint when they redesigned it.
How we would answer that is, I mean, this is a small lot, a small valuable lot that has some of the most spectacular views people could find. I mean, we're used to it here in Middletown, Newport and that, but these are some splendid views. It's not ocean front, but it's ocean view. And I think if you add all of that into it, these are the type of amenities, decks like this, that you would see on a house, or that you would probably want built on a lot like this. Other than that, the decks, there aren't a lot of amenities. There are bedrooms and bathrooms and living area for a family on that end of it. So that's how I would, in terms of the least relief necessary, it's reasonable based on these circumstances where you find this lot, what this lot has in terms of visual amenities.
Yeah, I mean, I think the key word in that, in what Mr. Pena just said, was about the reasonableness of the entire package. I mean, it's not an unreasonable house in terms of the overall, what we've seen, you know. A lot of the houses, even the bigger houses I referred to earlier that Mark Horan has built, he's built them right up to the maximum of lot coverage. Those lots are 4 times the size of this lot in a lot of cases. You know, I think that I really think that, and like I said, those houses are much larger, you know, 4,000 or 5,000 square feet. So I just think it's an overall a reasonable design. It's a reasonable request, considering all the circumstances.
But the lots you were just talking about, you were saying there's a reason they're 4,000 and 5,000, 3,000 or 4,000 square foot houses. How close are they to the boundary? That's the difference.
Well,
That's the difference. When you build something 3 stories and you're only 5 feet away from the boundary, 4 feet from the overhang, that's too close.
I'm not going to argue it's very difficult to work. I've owned houses that are that tight, you know, and it's tough. But it's not without precedent in the neighborhood.
That's why I was asking you about the ones you were talking about. How close were they?
Well, they're built right up to the, whatever the sideline setback is. I know, especially in the case of the ones that Horan built on Walcott Avenue, you know, whatever the absolute minimum is has been used for the.
But they still have
still the
15
minimum,
feet.
though.
It is.
It's still the 15 feet. That's the difference, you see.
But see, there's no but what I referred to earlier was that there's a hardship when you get into a lot of 4,800 square feet in an R10 zone that doesn't exist. That's why I said that you could get 75. When you get below 7,500 square feet in an R10 zone, it becomes virtually impossible to not have some request for relief. I mean, we're so consistently seeing this both in Newport and here that it just seems to be very reasonable for that request. And again, I'm not saying that individual points are not well taken, but I just think it's the overall package that I'm looking at appears to be very much in conformance.
Mr. Hool, you used the word precedent here. You've given us the impression, I think in some of your examples, you've got some houses that are in the near vicinity that you would say has established a precedent. So could you explain that to us?
Well, I mean, when you look at, you know that the house, I mean, I'll be very honest, I did not take the time to go through the zoning files of each of the properties. But the logic dictates that if you have houses that are the same general height, that are containing the same internal amount of living area, and are on smaller lots, they have to, at some point or another, have had to ask some sort of relief. If you look at 52 Tuckerman Avenue and 50 Tuckerman Avenue, there's virtually the amount of room between those, which is on page 7, you can see the amount of room between those houses cannot be 20 feet. It simply is, I mean, 30 feet, which is, if they each were 15 feet, it would be 30. That looks like a narrow lane. I know that 57 Tuckerman is over the sideline setback and over every dimensional setback because they use the existing foundation, but then maximize that foundation by going up a full 3 stories on top of it. So that it's clear that this is an area that this is what people are doing. You know, there is a precedent for it.
Mr. Donovan just pointed out to me that he believes 50 and 52 Tuckerman only have 5-foot setbacks. And the photo would seem to at least support that.
It's all well and good, but I think in the code it actually says we're not, what happens in the neighborhood, we can't really look at, we have to look at this one. So I understand we could say, hey, everyone else is doing it, but at some point we have to make the decision based on your argument and what the code says.
Well, there is the question of, does the property, you know, conform to the neighborhood, and there it enters into it.
I guess my question is, and I've been trying to figure out how to articulate this, we're always told that your argument could be this property is worth $635,000. In Mr. Donovan's case, this is a family property, so it's not quite the same. But if somebody came along out of the blue and bought this property, it hadn't been their family since 1983, they own the rules and regulations that are there, right? I mean, I understand your point that you have to build a house that's appropriate for the property value, but at some point, as my peer said, we have to look at what's the most equitable relief, you know, for the neighborhood. That's what I struggle with, because and it's not just this property, it's that neighborhood in general has gotten so hyper inflated that all the properties are worth a lot of money. So it's how do we balance that off with the characteristic of the neighborhood and the minimum relief necessary for the full enjoyment of the property.
Yeah, one of the points I was trying to make would be Donovan's attachment to this neighborhood for so long, and the fact that they're gonna live there full time, is that this is a neighborhood, like a lot of neighborhoods that I'm familiar with in Newport, they're going dark. And in order to, in a situation like this, in order to have a family like the Donovans stay there year-round, they do need a reasonably sized modern house. I don't think they're pushing the limits. They are going, I think they've shown their commitment to stay here. They're going to stay here. It's going to be full-time, and they'll bring some stability to that neighborhood. So it's not dark for a good part of the year. So the reason I'm just bringing that up in response is that I think to have something reasonable and modern now is what's called for, and it is the least relief necessary, even though you could put a 20, and I'm sorry, Mr. Gambrell, I think your math was correct, just that it was 20 by 43 square foot shoebox if we conform to the code, but then we still have the lot coverage. This lot is only, Middletown says it's a R10, supposed to be 10,000 square feet. We're already 48% short on that.
I mean, one of the other problems you have is that the
Excuse
code,
me, we're 48% of that.
so you're 52% short.
Yeah.
You know, one of the problems that you have is the code itself does allow for variance, and one of the actual definitions of variance is that it's to allow a homeowner not to be deprived of what neighbors are commonly enjoying. So it is sort of important to do a comparison to see what other people have done in a neighborhood.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for?
I'm
Mr.
just
Holmes?
curious as to whether you'd be willing to work and reduce the overall size of the house.
I can,
talk to the wife, we've already lessened the size of it. Oh, as far as the decks go?
Not necessarily decks, I mean, the mass of the entire house.
I mean, we've already taken it down so much. We thought the first time we came here in January, we're already asked for minimum relief necessary, so, I mean, obviously I talked to the wife, like I said, I can't make any decisions like that without consulting her, but, yeah, I mean, we've already knocked this thing down so much, and we're just like, we gotta keep knocking it down. It's kind of killing us. We just want to move on with our lives, move our family here, and just be part of the neighborhood. It's like all these hurdles we have to jump through. It's exhausting. But like I said, I have to talk to the wife, but that's where we're at. I mean, I know 900 square feet of deck sounds crazy and all that. I mean, part of the deck's above, on the second floor, above, you know, kids' bedrooms on the first floor. Then it's pretty much, it's a triple decker, so, you know, you got 300 square foot deck in the front, it's just 10 by 30, it's the width of the house. It's like, why not have the deck be the width of the house?
Yeah.
It's only 10 feet wide, then you multiply that by 3, of course you're gonna get 900.
I'm a fan of outdoor space. I
Yep.
agree with the situation
All right.
of the decks, but you were changing your calculations because you were taking away 900 square feet of deck space, of mass of the building.
Okay. I mean, I don't know all the laws and everything, so if I misspoke, I apologize.
No, you didn't. I mean, it's.
Any other questions for either the applicant or Mr. Holt? At this time, I'd like to ask if there's anyone in the audience that would like to speak either for or against the petitioner. Seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing. Can I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the petition with the front setback at 10 feet instead of the 7 feet.
Adding the three.
Add the 3 feet to the front setback.
Do I have a second?
I second the motion.
Discussion?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I think I have listened to the Donovans and the things that they've tried to do to make this work. And I think if you look at this from the perspective of the town, and we want the town to grow, this is a young family. They're doing all that they can to get a house here in town. And I think when you look at the things that they've asked for, and even though I agree that in terms of they're trying to get the best house that they can get on this lot, I agree with that. But they're also trying to use the lot to the best of its ability. And I think based on that, the things that they've done, and the fact that we want our town to continue to grow, we want entrepreneurs to come here, we want folks that own their own business like they do to come here, I think that this is definitely, the conversation we're having is definitely due to the unique characteristics of the lot. And I think it is in keeping with the general character and the nature of this neighborhood, and therefore I'm going to support it.
I agree with my colleague for the full enjoyment of that property and the willingness to kick that front back another 3 feet. I'm going to vote in favor of the petition.
I can't vote in favor of it. I just don't believe that it's the least relief necessary. I think that an overall smaller building, smaller size, smaller mass is more appropriate. And, I just don't believe it's the least relief necessary.
Yeah, I concur. It appears to me that whether someone's definition of hardship or what you need to do to make arguably a 3-bedroom, and with the 4th bedroom being possibly for grandma moving in later on or for an office. And then if you look at the size of the lot and the information that was presented before us and overall lot coverage, this, with the exception of the 45% really anomaly, I believe this would be the largest footprint of any house on Tuckerman, just based upon the information that was presented to us here. And I just don't think they've met that here. I'm all in favor of a family. I have a young family here. I came from out of town, and I understand all that the applicants would bring to the town, but I don't think they've demonstrated the hardship or the need to put a house of this size on a lot of this size. You know, the hardship is a lot, but I don't think they've done all that they can do or is reasonably expected.
Okay, thank you. I struggle with that neighborhood for a lot of the reasons that my peers have said. I think in this case, the petitioner has requested the least relief necessary, and I'm going to support the position. So, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
Aye.
Opposed say nay. It's defeated 3-2, correct, Mr.? You need a supermajority for that?
Need 4 votes.
Okay, what I'd like to do at this point, so, Mr. Bean, I'm sorry that we weren't able to pass.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Thanks for your time.
We're going to take a short recess, and when we come back, we'll address the calendar to see whether we'll get through everything.
That one's coming back. So you want to keep that as a reminder. Keep it, because we'll be comparing numbers from this time to next time.
Just to, Mr. King,
Yes, sir.
we're going to
9 o'clock.
How far into this calendar do you think we'll get?
Depends how fast everybody is.
I cannot guarantee that we will reach everyone tonight, but we will do our best. Can you read the
Sure. Petition of Esplanade Realty Trust by their attorney Gerard Galvin for a variance from section 603, 701, and 802B to remove an existing non-conforming 3-family dwelling structure and allow the construction of a single-family residence with a left and right yard setbacks of 10 feet where 15 feet is required, a rear yard setback where 20 feet where 30 feet is required, and a lot coverage 29.9 where 25% is allowed. Said real estate is located at 47 Tuckerman Avenue and further identified as Lot 108 and Tax Assessor's Plat 116.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, Gerard Galvin for the Esplanade Realty Trust and members of the board. Thank you for hearing me. This, in a coincidence in scheduling, this lot is the immediate abutting lot to the south of the petition, the lot that was the subject of the previous petition. We are seeking relief to build a single-family home on that lot. We hope that there are distinguishing characteristics of this application that will result in a different result. We think that there are facts and what is proposed here that is lower in scope and impact to the neighborhood that we hope we will gain your support on. The petitioner is the Esplanade Realty Trust. The trustee of the trust is Martha Barassa. She is here with me tonight and will be testifying. Jim Hool will be providing an expert report on land use. In many respects, it will be similar in terms of his findings on the neighborhood, but I do think you'll see some distinguishing facts and features about our proposed use of this lot. Additionally, Steve Furtado, who's the builder and designer of this home, is here in case you have any questions for him. One of the major distinguishing features from the matter you just heard is what is currently existing on this lot. And as the application states, there is a legal nonconforming three-family use. It's an old structure. It's in somewhat of disrepair. It's very, very close to Tuckerman Avenue. And what my client is proposing here, we hope you will see, is an attempt to bring this lot and a proposed structure that is in vastly much more conformance with the neighborhood and what is intended by the code to reduce that three-family use to a single-family use. And in doing that, our petition reduces the infringement on the frontage setback totally, whereas right now it's right up on Tuckerman. We're going to move it totally back outside of the setback. On the north side, there is currently a 3-foot, 7-inch setback where 15 feet is required. The proposal is to, will still be in the setback, but it'll be 10 feet away from that north property line instead of 3 feet, 7 inches. On the south side, similarly, right now, the structure that's there is 6 feet and 2 inches from the property line. We are also moving that in to 10 feet. Again, as was discussed previously, we're talking about a shoebox type approach here, and that's what my client is putting forward. She can't get all the way to 15 feet on those sides, but she's making what we think is a very reasonable effort to take into account the neighborhood, the neighbors, and the ordinance by bringing it into 10 feet. By pushing the building from right on Tuckerman towards the back of the property, we are seeking relief for the rear setback. Where 30 feet is required, we're seeking a rear setback of 20 feet. One reason we've shifted it to the back is to relieve some of that congestion right on Tuckerman, to provide for off-street parking off of Tuckerman, but also because my client owns the property to the immediate west on the Esplanade. So to the extent she's creating any impact here with this proposal, she wants to bear the brunt of that impact herself. And that's why the relief we're seeking in the back has sort of shifted the impact from the front to the back of the yard. Currently, this old three-family structure that exists there creates about a 36% lot coverage. With this proposal, that would be reduced to just under 30%. So again, she's making an effort to try to rein in the lot coverage in that area. And of course, she's dealing with the same, essentially the exact same shape and size lot that you just heard. It's a very small lot. She's under 5,000 square feet in an R10. So relief is necessary, we believe. We believe the effort that she's making here is responsible and reasonable. And with that, I would like to call Martha Barraza.
Okay.
Why don't you sit over this side? If you could raise your hand to be sworn.
Raise your right hand, please. Do you swear the testimony tonight will be the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
State your name and address for the record.
Martha Barraza, 409 Greendale Avenue, Needham, Massachusetts. B as in boy, O-U-R-A-S-S-A.
Mrs. Barraza, when did you first purchase property down here in Middletown, Rhode Island?
June of 1983.
Okay. And that was with your husband, Ron
It was.
Barraza? Okay. You gotta let me finish the
Okay,
question.
sorry. I'm new at this.
Now, what was the property you purchased back in 1983?
In 1983, we bought a lot of land, which is now 42 Esplanade. We constructed a single-family home at that time. And we used to look out the back of our house and see 47 Tuckerman, and we always dreamed about owning that. My husband passed away in 2009, and this property in October of 2011 came on the market. So my children and I decided that it was a dream that we always shared and that we should purchase it.
Now, when you purchased the Esplanade lot in '83, you built that single-family house there.
Correct.
And your builder was Steve Furtado, correct?
Not then.
Not then.
Then my husband he hired a contractor that was a family friend.
Okay.
And then we remodeled it and Jimmy Furtado, Steve's brother, was the foreman, and Jimmy used to take care of everything. And when Jimmy passed, Steve took over.
Okay, and the design for the property on the Esplanade, what you own, and that's where you live in the summer, correct? That is essentially the same design that is being proposed for behind you now at 47 Tuckerman,
Correct.
correct? Okay. Now, Mrs. Barassa has put together a package of some images of the property currently, as well as the proposal, which supplements the application. It's on the big board here, but there's individual copies. for
Okay,
you.
we'll mark that Exhibit A.
This would be, I guess, petitioner's page, please. Just pass those. And, Mr. Ross, I'm just going to step up here.
I think so. Yep.
Do you have enough? I'm sorry,
Yeah, we have this, we have plenty.
In petitioner's A1, could you just describe what we're looking at in that picture?
This is the existing structure. This is a studio apartment. This is a one-bedroom apartment. And in front of that, there's another one-bedroom, which together makes the three-family dwelling.
And when you say in front, you mean actually in the backyard?
Correct.
Okay. Now, if we could turn to A2, I think what you're showing here is
The setbacks.
the setback from the property to the north. which is
Correct.
The Dunwoody property.
Correct.
And the border is actually this.
Yes, it's only
portion,
like
correct?
2 feet.
Okay. Now, A3, that's the other side of the property, the southern border, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
And the arrow indicates my house in front to show the height, that it doesn't exceed the height.
Okay, that's the Esplanade house,
Correct.
where you live in the
Correct.
suburbs. Okay. Now, A4. Could you describe that?
That's the proposed structure on the Tuckerman Avenue side, with a 2-car garage underneath, and living space on top.
Okay. And A5?
Is a side view of the proposed house.
And so the side facing Tuckerman would be on this side,
Correct.
and where the deck is, that's in the backyard,
Correct, facing my existing house.
facing your existing house. And the edge of this deck would be 20 feet away from your property line.
Correct.
And A6, what is that that we're looking at?
A6 is my house on the Esplanade, which is a similar structure, won't be exactly alike, it won't be a carbon copy. It also will not have the outside staircase that I have on the Esplanade. It will have a lower level entranceway into the garage. I could not have entrance to the garage because it had to conform to coastal resources back in the grade 84.
Now, A7 and A8 are just grown-up versions of the diagrams, which are part of the application, so I'm not going to walk through those. But to segue into how you're going to use this property, let me just ask you about your property on the Esplanade.
Mhm.
You live there and have lived there in the summer since 1983.
Mhm.
And in the off-season since 1983, how have you used that property?
Majority of the time, it's been War College rentals.
War College rentals?
Rock College rentals.
Okay.
The majority of the time.
Mhm. Have you ever had year-round rentals?
Never.
Okay. Have you ever done short-term rentals, weekly rentals or anything like that in the off-season?
Back in the early days when my husband was alive, we did. Since he passed away, I do not do that anymore.
Okay. And what is your intended use of this proposed structure, should it be granted?
I would form a similar rental. It will not be short-term rentals. It'll be long-term rentals or War College rentals, but
Okay.
nothing short-term.
And how is it that you came to this design for this lot?
Well, I've pondered a lot of different designs, but the house on the Esplanade gets rave reviews. Everybody loves the design, so why fight with success? I wanted to continue with a successful design.
Did you contemplate keeping this property in a 3-family setup?
I could, but it requires so much improvements, I didn't think it was cost effective. And also, having a single family would be more conducive, more appropriate in the neighborhood than a three-family.
Okay. The design of the house, how many bedrooms is it going to be?
3 bedrooms,
3 bedrooms, and will they all be on the second floor?
correct.
Okay, and in that first floor where we see the garage bays there, what else would be on that first floor?
Garage, storage, beach chairs, beach toys, things, just storage area.
Okay. And the proposed deck in the backyard, we're talking only, I think, about 8 feet deep by 20 feet wide, correct? I believe that's what you're mentioning.
Yeah,
Now, in your experience, is that about the size of your deck on the Esplanade?
it was originally the design, but since then, we've shortened the deck on the Esplanade to expand the interior living space.
I see. Were you intending to have that deck space in the backyard versus the front in order to kind of keep it conducive to the neighborhood, or?
Well, it just makes, it enhances the view to have it away from Tuckerman Avenue.
Okay.
It's better to, it's more, the view is in the back, or what I call the back.
Okay. I don't have any further questions at this time. I'd offer Mrs. Barassa to answer any questions that you might have of her intentions here and her rationale for putting this petition forward.
You mentioned you use the property currently as year-round rental, or War College rental, so about 10, 11 months out of the year?
My existing house?
Mhm.
Yes,
And you have the same plan for?
I
this
do.
house? And do you
It would
live,
never be a short-term rental situation.
do you live in 42 Esplanade and that
In the
month that it's
when
unoccupied?
when it's not rented, from when my tenant moves out in June till Labor Day.
And the plan for the 47 Tuckerman is year-round rentals?
It would, if that person came along, otherwise it would be a War College rental, but it would be a long-term rental, it will never be a short-term rental.
Because you mentioned your kids recommending you guys do this, so what are they thinking about coming down?
Oh, my son also owns a house at 112 Esplanade.
Okay,
And my daughter lives with me now, but who knows, she might want to take over that property.
okay.
And my grandchildren, and yes, I have growing family. We're committed to the neighborhood.
What's the height of the proposed structure?
The height, if you're looking at it from Tuckerman at the grade, at the eastern edge of the structure would be 25 feet. The grade goes down, so in the backyard at the end of the structure from ground level, it would be 32 feet. At no point does it, I believe, come close to the 35. It stays straight all the way back.
That's why I noted it on the existing house.
You've got the rear grade at 32 feet here in the picture?
The rear grade, yes.
And you've got a deck in the back here, 8 by 20?
That's correct. If there are no other questions for Mrs. Barras at this time, and I'll call my second witness, Mr. James Hool.
Very good.
Yep.
Do you swear the testimony tonight to be the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
State your name and address for the record.
James Houle, Houle, 198 Union Street, Portsmouth, Rhode Island.
This board recognizes you as a real estate expert, Mr. Hool.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I do have copies of Mr. Hool's report, which I'd like to submit as petitioner applicant B,
Yep.
and Mr. Hool's CV is attached to that.
Thank you, sir.
So, Mr. Hool, I know just prior to this petition, you testified extensively about the neighborhood, and in some ways, this petition is very similar to that, in other ways, it's very different from that. I guess I'd start by just asking, what we retained you to investigate at the property, and we can go from there.
That's right. My assignment was to review the petition in terms of the request for the variances required.
And what did you do to perform those tasks?
Well, I reviewed the petition, I drove down, I again looked at the site, I looked at the neighborhood, I reviewed the zoning code and the comp plan, formed my opinions, and prepared the report that you have here.
Now, how would you describe the structure that's currently on this property and how it conforms to the neighborhood and the comp plan and the zoning code?
All right, so this report is very, very similar to the last report that we had, and a lot of the same lot coverage and things, but we get into the differences. And the primary difference is that currently there's a 1,260 square foot, 3-family house, clearly over density. It's very close to the front and the sideline. I think that it may be close on all sidelines, and is just really in very poor condition. It's the end of its economic life. So the replacement of this property with the proposed house would decrease the setbacks, or would increase the setbacks, so your nonconformity is decreased. It doesn't, no longer would it be too close to the front. You do need a little relief in the back. The same situation holds true here. You have a less than a 5,000 square foot lot. The house that's being proposed would have 29% lot coverage. It will have 10-foot sideline setbacks where 15 are required, 20 in the back where 30 is required, and it will conform in the front. It conforms to the height. So it's actually a much different petition in the sense that even though the ultimate result of the building is similar, it actually solves a number of problems. The existing house has a 36% lot coverage. It'll now be reduced to 29%. And just from the last conversation we had about lot coverages in the neighborhood, for lots that have 7,000 or less square feet, 29 is the average. So this is actually very much in conformance with what is in the neighborhood. I'll be happy to go through in the criterion if you.
Right, and speaking to the comp plan, the reduction or the reining in from a 3-family use to a single-family use, how would you describe that in terms of land use and the direction the town should be moving in?
Well, it really is much more in conformance with what the comp plan and zoning code have called for in an R10 neighborhood. A 3-family is a very dense use of the property, and as we said, not only is the use very dense, but the way it was built is actually, doesn't meet many of the requirements at all.
All right, now, in terms of the specific criteria that the board has to find, could you, or determine, could you walk us through your findings on that?
Sure. The hardship from which the applicant seeks relief is due to unique characteristics of the subject land. I think that's absolutely correct. I did make the comment before, and I stand by it, that as soon as you get below 7,500 square feet and you have the requirements that are in an R10 zone, it becomes almost impossible to build a house that is reasonable, of modern standards, that conforms to all the setbacks. So I really believe that it is a hardship just having a lot that is that much smaller, less than half of the land area, that all the dimensional requirements are based on having a lot that's more than double the size of this lot.
And I'm specifically wondering if you think that this effort by Mrs. Barassa is in any way motivated by maximizing financial gain. Moving from a 3-family to a single family, it strikes me that she's giving up some revenue.
That's right, exactly. You don't typically think of I mean, you truly think of a three-family house as an income-producing piece of property, and it does have a lot of, especially in that area, you have a lot of opportunity for very strong short-term rentals. That's not going to be the case with this property, and I think she is giving up a lot.
Will it alter the general character of the neighborhood?
No, not at all. You know, again, directly across the street, there are 3 houses that are larger than the subject property will be. We have 2,640 square feet. The only one is number 50 is 2,500, but it is a smaller lot by 200 square feet. The others are larger. Again, when we go through the coverage, the lot coverages, as I said, the average lot coverage for the area is 27, but when you get into the smaller lots, and I went all the way up to 7,000 square feet, you're at 29, which is pretty much exactly what the applicant is requested.
All right, now, importantly, I want to know your thoughts on least relief necessary. And I think this is a distinguishing feature when you compare this petition with the preceding one. I believe that this is substantially smaller in scope than the petition that just came forward. I believe this is the least relief necessary. Can you speak to that to the board?
Well, I think that a lot of it has to do with the existing use on the property. The fact that this is a three-family use currently on the property, the fact that the configuration is encroaches all over the place, that the new one would not be much more in conformance. I believe that it really is the least relief necessary.
Okay. Now, if this is not granted, will it amount to more than a mere inconvenience for the Esplanade Realty Trust and Mrs. Barrasso?
I believe so.
And why is that?
Well, the petition is, again, seeking what I consider to be a reasonable use, a conforming reasonable use for this property. And I believe that because it's so in harmony with the neighborhood, and it'll be more in harmony with the physical setbacks, that it truly would be more than a mere convenience if it was not granted.
Thank you very much. I don't have any further questions from Mr. Poole at this time. Obviously, he's here to answer any of your questions.
Any questions for the witness? I think we're good, Mr. Galvin.
Thank you.
With that, I would rest at this time reserved to cross-examine anybody else.
Absolutely. I'd like to invite anyone in the audience that would like to speak either for or against the petition to do so at this time. Seeing none, we will close the public hearing. Motion?
Motion approved. Second motion.
Discussion?
I'm going to vote in favor of the proposal. I do believe that it is the least relief necessary, and the fact that you're actually reducing the side yard setbacks is important, and going away from the three-family dwelling to a single-family dwelling. For all those reasons, I vote in favor.
I'm also going to support it. That the positioning of the current house there really encroaches on the road more than anything. And as we've already discussed, parking in this area, particularly during the summer months, is really, really bad. So moving the house back and getting it further off the road is a good thing in this particular case. And I also agree that the owner petitioner could probably even ask for more than they're asking. So I think that this was a good plan for the space, given the nature of the existing lot. So I'm also going to support.
I'm also going to vote in favor of it. The existing lot coverage is at 36%, and they're reducing that down to 29.9, taking out a three-family non-conforming use, putting in a single family with minimum setbacks.
It's hard to make an argument against this one. I agree that she probably could have went a little bit further. I mean, this is very modest. She's basically reducing every characteristic of the current structure into something a little bit smaller, with the exception of the rear setback, which you almost have to do based on improving the front setback. So I'm going to support the application.
I too am going to support it. I agree with my colleagues. Typically, we would have heard the argument that we're going to build on the existing footprint and go up. So it was nice to see a modest request. The nature of those lots in that area, as I said in the last petition, it's very difficult to build anything that's close to conforming when you're starting with less than 50% of the lot that's supposed to be there for the zoning code. So I too am going to support it. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you.
Petition of SKN Associates LLC by their attorney Sean Bouchard for a variance from section 603, 701, and 803G to construct a 4,900 square foot addition to the existing building with a front yard setback of 1 feet where 10 feet is required. Said real estate is located at 15 Valley Road and further identified as Lot 35 and Tax Assessor's Plat 107.
Good evening, Mr. Bouchard.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Sean Bouchard. I'm an attorney from the law offices of Silva, Thomas, Martland, and Offenberg, here this evening representing the applicant, SKN Associates LLC. For those of you who are familiar with this site, this is the location of the Napa Auto Parts store. And the proposal before you this evening is to create a 4,900 square foot addition to the existing facility. If you've driven by, you may have noticed that there are several containers that currently exist on the site that hold some additional inventory for the business. The proposal that we're going forward with is to enclose that area that's currently pavement and create an actual extension of the building in order to house that additional inventory. There's no additional retail component within the building. It's simply for the additional inventory that's been ultimately needed based on the success of the business. I'm joined this evening by Mike Russell, who's the head engineer in connection with this proposal, as well as Ken Benson, who's the owner of Napa Auto Parts, who's prepared to answer any questions you might have in connection with the business operations at this site. So if you'll notice, there's a variance request for a 1.5 foot setback. If you look at the site plan, you'll notice immediately that the building, although substantially set back from the roadway, is directly on the property line. The state right-of-way at the corner there, at the bend of the road of Valley Road, is quite substantial, and so the existing facility is actually only 1.1 feet off of the sight line. We're proposing to maintain the existing setback from that as it extends along the frontage of Valley Road. In addition, this is also a special use permit, as the size of the lot does back up to Bailey Brook, and so we are in the Zone 1 watershed. If you will notice in the packets, you should have decisions of approval from both the Conservation Commission, the Planning Board, and the Technical Review Committee, who have all reviewed this application in connection with the Zone 1 impacts, as well as the drainage and environmental impacts associated with this site. In connection with that, I would ask that Mike Russell come forward just to run the board through what engineering is taking place in connection with this proposal and what criteria the Technical Review Committee has requested be incorporated into this decision.
Raise your right hand. Do you swear the testimony this evening will be the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
State your name and address for the record.
Mike Russell, 680 Aquidneck Avenue in Middletown.
Mr. Russell, you've presented before us, so we'll recognize you as an expert as far as engineering.
Thank you.
This evening.
So, Mr. Russell, if you wouldn't mind, could you just run us through some of the highlights of the design aspects that went into this proposal?
Certainly. So the proposal is largely surrounds the building addition, which is 70 by 70, 4,900 square feet, which adjoins the existing Napa building. It was subject to a number of different permit applications, both locally and with the state. We first had to go to Rhode Island DOT for a physical alteration permit for the change in use. One of the primary items on that permit application was to relocate that evergreen screening that's currently on the property line. So in order to construct this addition, that has to be removed and replaced. So DOT approved that activity. We had to
go to Rhode Island DEM for a preliminary determination application. This property has submitted a number of PDAs with DEM in the past. They've all received, including this one, an insignificant alteration. It was necessary because of the proximity to Bailey's Brook, within 200 feet of the riverfront area. Outside of the building addition, there are no other proposed site improvements. We're actually removing some of the existing pavement outside of the proposed footprint, replacing that with landscape. There were, as Mr. Bouchard mentioned, a technical review committee. There were a few conditions associated with that process. They wanted any sub-base from the old pavement removed, and also the existing detention basin, which is on the property. They want that prepped and maintained in an ongoing basis. So prepared and maintained on a long-term basis. There are, in putting in the building addition, the only stormwater management improvement that we had to make, because this is essentially roof water that we're having to capture and treat, is a modification to the outlet structure in that basin. So no other practices are needed or proposed. And then as far as the town's concerned, we went to the Conservation Commission. As Sean indicated, they ruled favorably on the application. Technical Review Committee, as was mentioned, ruled favorably. There was some minor conditions there, and then the Planning Board, during the development plan review process, had ruled favorably. They approved a handful of waivers and sent us on to zoning. As far as utilities are concerned, there's no proposed utility connections to Valley Road. Everything is going to be an internal extension from the existing building. As was mentioned, it's just primarily inventory. Deliveries for the facility will be, we've identified a loading space in area. It's what I would call a mobile loading space. There's no loading dock or designated area. There's a roll-up door on the back of the building where the deliveries will be made. The applicant could speak to the specific nature of that if necessary. There's no additional parking required by this addition. They have ample parking, more than enough for the use. And there's, as I mentioned, there's no other site improvements. We're just trying to protect the area because of its location and its proximity to Bailey's Brook.
What's the 4x4 pad in the back for?
Oh, that's just a door for the door. One of the
A rear door?
doorways. Yep.
And the containers that are there now, they'll be removed?
Correct. Yes.
How large are the containers?
8 by 40. Yeah, and so those will all be removed, as the need will no longer be there, since we'll have the inventory able to be housed within the building.
So when you get your deliveries from, like, vendors, they come in tractor trailer trucks?
So I will get to that. I do have Ken Benson here who can answer related to the business operations standpoint. Before I get to that, is there any other questions related to the engineering aspects?
Yes, could you speak, you talked about the being close to Bailey's Brook and having to make some modifications based on the zoning ordinance and water protection. I see some things listed here. Can you explain those?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yeah. Based on the position of the building, based on increasing the size of the building, you're obviously going to have to handle more of the stormwater, rainwater. So you talked about the existing system, but you didn't really talk about the existing system.
Sure.
So what's there?
So there's an existing detention basin on site. So it has adequate capacity to accommodate this 4,900 square foot addition. The roof water runoff from the addition will be hard piped to the detention basin. It was discussed during technical review committee and also with DEM. They did not want it sheet flow to commingle with the parking lot flow to pick up any other additional pollutants, which would then enter into the pond. So yes, that's probably one of the main points to mention is that roof water is going to be hard piped into the detention basin. So as I mentioned, we don't have to make any modification to that other than we have to raise the outlet a few tenths to account to provide more capacity for that 4,900
That's
square
what I was
feet.
gonna ask, so you had to expand the capacity.
Right, and we were able to do that not by making the basin bigger, but by raising the outlet in the basin.
And part of the Conservation Commission's, not Conservation, I'm sorry, the Planning Board recommendation is that you're going to record a stormwater management maintenance easement with the town. Is that something you'll be handling for the applicant?
Yes.
And if we make that a part of the motion, you won't have a problem with that?
Not at all.
Okay. And there won't be any, and I guess this is an operations question, but part of the issue with Zone 1 is chemicals, but I don't see this as an expansion of use, as more as moving the stuff that's in the existing outside storage inside.
Correct,
Am
yeah.
I-
That's 100% correct, and again,
Okay.
I'll make sure Mr. Benson runs through kind of how the inventory works, and we'll address that for sure. Yep. Are there any other questions for Mr. Russell this time? Okay. I do have two exhibits I'd like to introduce to the board. The first that I will bring up is a rendering that was provided by, so the first image here, this is the existing conditions, picture taken by Corson Design Architecture. And then
Exhibit A.
And then the Exhibit B, this is a rendering that was generated by Corson Design Architecture. This was provided in connection with the planning board comments.
Okay.
And so as you'll see in Exhibit B, there has been an alteration not only to the expanded section, but to the building as a whole in order to try and reduce the visual impact of the blue and to better address the roof structure to try and break up the facade. There was a back and forth with the planning board. We did have a revision made, and this is ultimately what would be proposed to be moving forward with the entirety of the structure. I did want to make sure that that was introduced into the record, as that is also part of the condition of the planning board recommendation, and we have no objection to it. So at this time, I'd ask that Mr. Benson come forward just to provide a couple points related to the business operations itself.
Raise your right hand. Do you swear that testimony this evening will be the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Do you state your name and address for the record?
Kenneth Benson, 1021 Wapping Road, Middletown.
I'm sorry, what is it?
1021,
Your name?
Kenneth Benson,
Okay, sorry.
Wapping.
So, Mr. Benson, there's been a couple questions that raised so far just related to the business operations of the existing facility as well as the proposed moving forward. When it comes to the existing storage containers, those will be removed from the property once this is completed. Is that correct?
Yes.
And when it comes to the storage of the inventory that's currently in those containers, that inventory will be housed within the facility. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And could you just describe generally what sort of inventory we're talking about that's going to be stored and how you envision that being handled in terms of delivery schedule?
The delivery schedule won't change. We do get tractor trailers about a week a month. The number of tractor trailers won't increase. It's just what's on them might increase as hopefully the business expands because I'll be able to hold more inventory. We get them typically between the 7th and 15th of the month is when we get tractor trailers during the day. Most of our inventory actually comes at night, after hours, between 10 and midnight, on a half a tractor trailer, and they come between 10 and midnight. The inventory that would be stored in this building is your general auto parts, brake rotors, exhaust, you know, there's be some chemicals, but it's chemicals that we stow right now. Things like that.
So the trucks are backed up alongside of the building? And there's
Yes.
adequate space for them to load and unload?
Yeah, we've had to train some of the drivers on how to do it right over the last several years, but they've got it down.
I don't have any other questions for Mr. Benson, but if the board has any questions, happy to address them.
Any other questions? I think we're good, Mr. Bouchard.
All right. Yep. And so just the last point I would make before we rest here would just be the number of waivers that were granted by the planning board. Those were all granted. Again, when you look at the list, it seems quite shocking at first that there's 9 or 10 conditions, but upon looking at the site of the existing structure, when you realize that the landscaping and all the rest is actually going to have to be located either on or on the other side of the property line, all those buffer requirements are asked to be waived, and that was what triggered the need for those, and ultimately we were able to receive approval from the planning board for all the waivers that we needed in connection with this proposal. So at this time, I don't have any other questions, but if you have any, I'm happy to answer them.
No, I think we're good, thank you.
Thank you.
Letter recommendations from the planning board?
It was in the package, so that this clip was written. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak for or against this petition? Seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing.
Make a motion to approve.
We deal with the variance first, correct, Mr.? Yes. So we're going to vote first on the variance.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second the motion.
Mr. Kurt, before you make that, can you put in your motion to include the recommendations of the planning board?
I would recommend you do that with a special use permit, include all the conditions of the planning board, the development plan review, as well as the watershed protection.
Okay, so conservation.
With the conservation commission.
So we'll do that. So we'll accept your recommendation, your motion as is, okay? Eric Curtin first, Tom Heady second. Discussion?
From what we've heard from both the engineer and the manager owner, I think they're asking for the lease relief in terms of being able to gain more space at the current facility, bring inventory which is now stored outdoors in containers indoors. And I think just from an overall aesthetic perspective, that would be an improvement. And in addition to that, just based on the discussions that we've already had, they are taking the measures that they're asking for is the lease relief required for the things that they've asked the expansion. So I'm going to support.
I'm also going to support it. All the oversight that we need to rely on from an engineering perspective, from a water treatment perspective, has approved this. Therefore, I'm in agreement.
I too am going to support it. I went out and walked the property, particularly looking, because it was a big building to be located so close to the setback, but there's actually over 50 feet between there and the road. And when you look at where the brook is, the building has to be placed where it is to give the proper setback from the brook. So I too am going to support it. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. Next, we'll take up the petition for the special use permit.
Motion to approve the special use permit with the attachments from the Planning Board, Conservation Commission, and the, what was the other one?
Development plan
The
review.
Development Plan Review Board.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Eric Curtin seconds. Discussion?
I'm voting in favor of the petition, the existing building with the renovations made and getting rid of the containers and the setbacks, the minimum setbacks required there. I'm going to vote in favor of the petition.
I too am going to support the petition. I think they've met all the requirements, and the oversight from, all the town boards has been excellent, and they had unanimous decisions at all points, so I too am going to support it. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Kane,
Yes, sir.
in the interest of people that are waiting, what's your best guess of where we'll get? Two more?
You have an appeal, special use permit variance together. You could probably get 3 at a minimum. I think if anyone on the list wishes to continue, you should probably give them the opportunity.
Yeah, if anyone's like down the list, like it's 7, 8, or 9, so that would be David and Mary Rodriguez, Constantinos are Wayne and Adrian Domier. There's a chance we won't get to you. You're welcome to stay. I'm here. You can keep us company. But right now, we're going to hear an appeal. So, Mr. Curtin?
All right. The appeal of Lori Abrams by Attorney Joseph Hook for an appeal of the issuance of a fence permit dated January 3rd, 2019 to Philip and Sandra Rondina, which authorizes the construction of a 6-foot-tall wood fence using 1x10 boards and posts of 4x4 within the property lines of Plat 126, Lot 60. Said real estate is located at 379 Third Beach Road and further identified as Lot 60 on Tax Assessor's Plat 126.
Just for the record, this is a continuation from 2 months ago, I believe. And we asked that the petitioner and the attorney for the aggrieved party submit briefs. At this point, I'd like you guys to kind of keep it limited to 10 minutes each and make your arguments, and then...
I assume the board has received for Mr.
Yes, we
Hooks
did.
and mine. Good.
I have an extra copy of my brief if anyone has it.
It was, we didn't vote. You vote. Yeah, we didn't have it here. Everyone should have received this from Celeste.
Who's the lawyer?
Yeah. There's a brief from both Mr. Silva
I didn't, I got it. Thank you.
and Mr. Hook.
I would, for the record, like to enter into, as exhibits, the transcript from the hearing of September 22nd, 2015. A copy was submitted with the building official's office.
We'll call that Exhibit A.
Is that in the court,
We have it, but,
All right, I'd ask that that be marked Exhibit A,
okay.
as well as the exhibits that were attached to my brief, which include the fence permit, which was issued on
And we have that as well.
January 3rd, as well as the application, or including the survey of MJ Gaston and Associates dated October 15th. That was included and attached to my brief. The decision of this zoning board of review dated October 20th, 2015, also attached to my brief. I would ask that be marked as an exhibit as well,
Okay.
as well as, I did have who was here, this gentleman was here at the 2 prior hearings, Barry McGough, who is a neighbor and an objector. He wasn't able to come tonight, but I have an affidavit from Mr. McGough that I've also submitted.
I believe that is in the packet as well.
And just for the purpose of expediency, I have to ask Mr. Silva if he could stipulate that there was no fence there at the time of the zoning, the application for zoning variance in September of 2015. If not, I would call Mr. Rondina.
So on the fence permit that was issued, it states that it's replacing existing fence with a new 6-foot wood fence using 1x10 pine boards and posts to be 4x4 PT within property lines. You're saying that's not right?
No, there is a post and beam, about 3-foot high post fence that's, for the most part, on my client's property. The new proposed fence, and that fence wasn't in existence in September of 2015 and was put up in sometime after my client purchased the property in 2017.
So the permit's in line then? The permit was to replace an existing fence?
Well, there is a fence that is on my client's property that was put up by the
I'm
applicant.
not asking whose property, I'm asking, this permit was pulled to replace an existing fence. Is this not correct?
That permit, is that permit to replace an existing fence? I mean, I suppose
It was pulled for 379 Third Beach Road.
that's the applicant's.
We'll let Mr. Silva
Okay.
address that. Why don't you go with your argument?
And I'd like to, but I do want to get some facts into evidence.
Okay.
So I would call my client, Lori Abrams, as a witness.
Okay. Ms. Abrams, raise your right hand. Do you swear the testimony this evening will be the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
State your name and address for the record.
Lori A. Abrams, 377-381 Third Beach Road, Middletown.
Ms. Abrams, do you own property located at 377 and 381 Third Beach Road in Middletown, Rhode Island?
Yes, I do.
And on that property, are there 2 cottages?
Yes.
And does that property abut property located at 379 Third Beach Road that is owned by Philip and Sandra Rondina?
Yes, it does.
And you acquired that property in September of 2017, is that correct?
Correct.
You purchased it from the Rondinas?
Yes.
And at the time that you purchased the property, was there a fence? Presently, there's a post fence that has 2 horizontal posts running about 3 feet wide along the boundary of your property and the Rondina's property.
Correct. That was put in after I purchased the property.
That fence was put in after you purchased the property. And that fence, was that put in by you?
No, sir.
And where, you've had that property surveyed, is that correct?
I did recently, yes.
And based on that survey, have you made a determination as to where or whose property the 2 horizontal post beam fence is located on?
A portion of it is on my property.
Okay. And the portion that's on your property would be the portion that runs in a northwesterly direction, correct?
It's the front, that's west. So it runs west, south to north.
West
West being front,
to north.
and then north to the right of me, and south to the left of me.
And then along the road, the accessway, your 15-foot wide accessway, that portion of the fence runs along and is alongside the Rondina's property, correct? The post and beam fence, it's not on the roadway, is it correct?
No, it's up on the lawn.
And that's on the Rondina's property, is that
A
correct?
portion of it is.
Yes. And the actual boundary way of your 15-foot wide access to Cordero Terrace, there's a roadway there, correct?
Yes.
And you only have 15 feet in width to enter your property.
For the most part I do, but there is a rebar that juts out onto the road and diminishes that 15-foot right-of-way.
The rebar, you mean the surveyor indicated that the boundary of your property is actually, a portion of the road, the access way is in the boundary, sorry, that, a portion of the access way is actually on the Rondina's property.
A portion of
A
the...
portion of the access way is on the Rondina's property, correct?
Yes,
So if the fence is built as proposed, it would actually, a portion of it would be along, actually in your 15-foot wide
a portion of it, yes.
access way.
Correct.
But the access way, all right. Now, the current fence that's there, do you have an issue or a problem with the visual aspect of the fence that is there?
I would like the portion of the fence that is on my property pushed off my property, and if that happens, I have no problem with the fence that is existing, that was put in after I purchased the property being there.
You have no problem with the visual, other than it's on your property, you have no problem with the visual aspect of the fence that's there.
That is correct.
But the fence that's being proposed, which would be a 6 feet tall wooden stockade fence, does that cause you any, what is your objection to the visual components of such a fence?
I have numerous objections. One, it completely obstructs my view to the street. I have no frontage from the street. So unless you pull in my driveway, you cannot see my cottages. Nobody can find me. I'm completely shut off and isolated, as well as it just changes the whole landscape of the neighborhood and the property.
All right. Now, at the time that you did acquire the property, to your west, there was a fence, a portion of it between your house and the Rondina's house, the actual portion of the property between your house and the Rondina's house, not the front of the cottage. I'm referring to
The side, which is
your side,
south.
the boundary on your side facing southwest. There is a fence there, and there was one at the time that you acquired the property.
It's south, it's not west, correct.
Is that correct?
South side.
Okay. And that gives you some privacy, is that correct?
I thought so.
All right. And it gives the Rondina some privacy, correct?
Yes.
All right. But the new fence that is proposed that would run in a northwesterly fashion from the Rondina's property essentially to the road access way and then down the road access way, does that serve any purpose that
They
you can
won't
tell?
they won't even have a visual to that fence. Their house is all the way to the side.
For the record, I'm going to object to this line of questioning. I've been rather loose with it. It is totally irrelevant to the appeal.
All right.
And when I get up, I'll tell you exactly what's before you and what is being contested.
I'm going to let Mr. Hook go, so
Your
let him,
objection to
I
this
note your
testimony
objection, but
on
I'd like to let Mr. Hook and his client put their testimony on record.
Thank you.
All right. All right. Now, Ms. Abrams, is there any purpose to the proposed addition to the fence that's being proposed by the Rondinas?
Not that I can tell. I have no idea why it's being constructed.
All right. And the new fence that's being conducted would essentially encapsulate your properties from the street with the exception of the 15-foot wide access way.
Which is to the south, to the north side of my property. So I have no frontage view if this fence is constructed.
All right. I have nothing further from this witness.
Okay.
And I
I'm
would-
saying with this new fence that's going up, it would be hazardous to you entering or exiting your property?
A portion of it, when you come around the corner, it will jut out, so I need to go all the way over to the right side, which is the north side of my driveway. So I have to come around it. Otherwise, I would hit it. and that is the only access way I have to my house.
And the fence as being proposed goes right up to that 15-foot access way. Doesn't have any, there's no setback at all. It's right up on the boundary. And it so happens that the actual driveway and the surveyed 15-foot access way are not in the same place. So I have nothing further from this witness.
But, so you've got a 15-foot wide access, right, into your property as it exists right now?
Yes.
And that gives you assurance that an ambulance could get in there, a fire engine could get in there, whatever needed to get in there could get in there using that 15-foot access?
Yes, I was concerned about that, but the Middletown Fire Department came and said they have a visual to the cottage.
All right, good, thank you.
What was your expectation when you bought these two cottages?
To have a quiet, to have just a quiet summer home. I live in Providence during the week, and I grew up in Rhode Island, I used to live in Bonnet Shores, and now recently in the last 10 years I've been coming to Middletown.
Did a real estate agent represent this property, or did the owner sell it to you?
I had a real estate agent, yes,
did?
yes.
And that, it's a split rail fence, a cedar split rail fence. That didn't exist at all when you bought this.
No, and there was no driveway put in. That was all after the closing that was put in.
So was there an agreement written with the prior owner that they were going to do a certain set of things that after you closed, or? Was it
No, I had,
recommended?
it was mentioned about the little stockade fence, and I had no issue with it. What I did have an issue with after I found out, there was a letter left in my mailbox to claim that I was parking where the fence is on my front of the house, that I was parking on their property line and I shouldn't park my car there. And that's what prompted me to have my own survey done. And that's when I discovered that the fence that they did put in after I had the closing is on my property.
But as far as, you said there weren't any agreements, I think there were a number of easements in addition to the road that also came with the splitting of the property, correct?
There's a septic, we share a septic system,
and
yes.
well,
Septic and well we share.
And the road.
Well, I have my own, but the septic system on the property is we share that.
This was subdivided, this was the one that was subdivided to leave it to the family members, correct? Because it was easier in the estate.
2015 came before this board, and this board granted the request for variances and a subdivision.
And we were told that it was going, this was the easier way to settle the estate, that it was all going to remain within the family, I believe, if I remember right. Is that correct?
If I don't violate any of the rules, I'll be glad to give a little bit of background.
Mr. Silva represented, that there was purpose of it was to subdivide it, not necessarily to leave it to the families, but so they could sell it. That was not, that their estate plan was to, I think, Mr. Silver said that they could sell it. So it wasn't going to be leaving it to their families. He talked about an estate plan, but not leaving this property to the family.
And the posts that are erected right now, that's the extent of the fence. It's not going to come all the way out for the right-of-way as well?
It will be, if this fence, which is a 6-foot fence, which the applicant does not take issue with our right to put up a fence. When they put this new fence up, it'll be right along the surveyed boundary lines of the lot that is now owned, still owned by the Rondinas. And it will not encroach on any property belonging to Ms. Abrams. We came before this board as a result of the planning board approving conditionally the subdivision of a lot. The original lot was lot 60. It had 36,024 square feet. And on that lot, there were 3 dwelling units. The main house that's occupied by Phil and Sandy Rondina, and the 2 separate dwellings on the same lot, 60, that have been there for over 60 years. built by Mr. Rondina's father. The Rondinas felt that for estate planning purposes, and in the event they wanted to sell this property, they had a non-conforming situation. They had 3 houses on one lot. Section 702 of the ordinance says you can only have 1 dwelling unit on one lot. So when we came before the planning board, we said we were going to reduce that non-conformity. We're going to create 2 lots, and one lot, lot 60, where the Rondina's residential home is located, would now conform. 1 house, 1 lot. The remaining lot that was purchased by Ms. Abrams would be less non-conforming. Instead of having 3 units, it would have 2. But when we sold the property 2 years after we got permission from this board to allow the subdivision to take place with some regulatory variances like rear yard, side yard setbacks, because this has been a non-conforming situation for years. It's an R60 zone. We never had 60,000 square feet in this lot. We only had 36,000. When some of these units were built, Middletown didn't even have zoning at that time. Well before zoning. And when we subdivided the property, we had to come to this board because the planning board could not allow a subdivision of a lot in a non-conforming manner. And he had to get variance relief to allow these 2 lots to exist. Back in 2015, we came before this board, we presented the plan. There was nothing considered by this board in the written decision about fences. The word fence is not mentioned in the transcript that you have or the decision that I wrote and presented to the zoning board for entry. We talked about dwellings, and when asked by Mr. Gambrell, does this mean you're going to put more houses up? I said, there will not be any additional dwellings or structures. That's what I said. There was no testimony. The Rondinas were not with me that night. They were away. And the board, after considering my offer of proof that we were going to degrade, we weren't going to degrade the situation. It was going to be upgraded. It's going to be 2 lots, 1 house on one lot and the other 2 houses on the other lot. The board granted the approval in that regard. We go back to the planning board then, because they had only given us conditional approval, and you guys show that the zoning board allowed the variances to be approved. And one of the variances is the 15-foot access that leads to the back lot where Ms. Abrams has 2 units, 2 dwelling units. And the lot contains less than 200 feet of frontage in an R60 zone. It contains 15 feet. And this board has done that innumerable occasions where you allow a 15-foot easement, or in this instance, part of the lot as access way to and from the rear units. And it's more than sufficient for emergency vehicles, police vehicles, and for pedestrians and other vehicles that use the premises in the rear. And that's what she bought. That's what the board gave us, was a lot in back that had exactly 20,117 square feet on her lot, and the Rondinas ended up with 15,906 square feet. Their access, the Rondina's access, is on Cordero Terrace. They have sufficient frontage. The only frontage that was insufficient was the 15-foot access way to serve the back lot. So there was nothing before this board in that decision about fences. And there's still nothing in front of this board tonight about fences. This is an appeal from the zoning officer's issuance of a fence permit for the Rondinas on their property to put up a 6 6-foot fence, which is permitted under zoning. And that's all they want to do. And there are reasons why the Rondinas want to put up a 6-foot fence. Several months after the property was sold, they want their own privacy, which is being invaded. And there's a totally different litigation going on in Superior Court about nuisance, abuse of use of properties and whatnot, and the feelings run relatively high between the parties. I'm not going to get into that. All I'm saying is this board has one duty tonight, to look at the issuance of a building permit for a fence and whether or not the Rondinas have a right to erect that fence. And in my argument, which I submitted to you, I noted it's important to highlight from the outset that the appellant, Lori Abrams, in all her filings, does not deny that the Rondinas have a right under the Middletown zoning ordinance to erect a fence. The sole basis for her appeal is on a mischaracterization and a misinterpreted reading of the transcript of September 22, 2015. Excuse me. And the fact that I responded to Mr. Gambrell's query, are there going to be more houses? I said there will be no more dwellings or structures on that property. You can come back in another day and look, and you won't even see anything different after the board grants the subdivision. And when I use the word structures, I didn't refer to or mean fences. This whole appeal is up here on one basis, that in the zoning ordinance, the word structure includes fences. But at no time did I ever represent to the zoning board, because the issue wasn't even before you, that no fence would be built. I said no other structures. And in the context, and if you read the opinion and the transcript, it's clear that I was talking about dwellings as structures and that there wouldn't be any additional dwellings. So there's no basis for this appeal whatsoever, and it's a issuance of a building permit by the building official that's totally in keeping with the zoning ordinance.
About the fence, Mr. Silver, my question to you, this proposed fence, will it obstruct, impede, or in any way, shape, fashion, whatever, emergency vehicles, or entering or exiting that 15-foot right away?
Absolutely not.
So a police cruiser won't have a problem, fire truck won't have a problem going up or coming out?
Absolutely not. There's an issue here in Ms. Abrams' mind, and that is she now has a fence across the front of her property that she doesn't like. But in due course, if you want to check the Superior Court litigation that's pending, there's a reason why the Rondinas were ultimately forced to put up that fence for their privacy.
I would add that at the time that my client purchased the property, and I think at the time that the zoning relief was granted, no reasonable person would have anticipated that the Rondinas would build a fence running along that 15-foot wide access way, nor along the front portion of my client's property. I think that reasonable people would not anticipate such actions because it's the location of those two areas of the fence don't provide privacy to the Rondinas because it's in their front yard, a large front portion of their yard. It's not in their backyard, and it's along that 15-foot wide. By the way, if this fence is approved and my appeal is denied, my client will have to move that 15-foot wide accessway because the proposed fence actually is in the actual accessway as opposed to the surveyed access way. The actual one is, to answer Mr. Gambrell's question to Mr. Silver, to respond to that, the actual fence will be in the actual roadway. My client will have to move the roadway at substantial cost. Structures defined in the zoning ordinance as any building, including a combination of materials to form a construction for use, occupancy, or ornamentation, whether at or above or below land. At the subdivision hearing, or the variance hearing of September 22nd, one of the members inquired that maybe a better route to go would have been a condominium. And if that had occurred, we wouldn't have had a fence. There wouldn't have been a need for a variance. It would have simply been a change in ownership form, and we wouldn't have had this problem at all. The fact that my client, or the Rondinas and my clients, don't get along, this is, to respond to Mr. Silvers, this is adding gasoline to a fire. This is not, it's done with spite and malice, and it has no purpose. And it's done in a purpose, only purpose that I can think of is to harm my client. The straight up reading of the, Mr. Silva, I know that he was responding to questions regarding building another building. It wasn't directed to fencing. That's true. But the language that's used is structure, which includes a fence. I have nothing.
Mr. Hook, how do you, we can only vote or make past judgment on the appeal that's before us. Do you agree with that? That's what we're here for.
Yes, you're
So here's my question. If you're saying a roadway was put in by somebody, I don't know who, and now they're putting a fence down the middle of it, isn't that a different lawsuit? This isn't the venue for that, right?
Well,
I
yes and no. I mean, we're appealing the issuance of the fence permit, and the grounds is that the applicant for the fence permit said they wouldn't build any structures. And oh, by the way, they're proposing to build the structure along the road access way. Not only along it, but in it.
If they put a pergola over their deck, that's a structure. Would you be here?
No, because my client's a reasonable person.
I know, I see both sides of the argument, and so it's hard to pass judgment, but it seems like we're dealing with two things. The fence is one issue, and we're gonna decide that tonight. But if the fence is going along into the driveway, as I looked at it, it's also going into a turnaround section of the driveway. That's really not a question that we can answer here, or nor should we, right? We could have, if this was brought up when they were subdividing it, saying this is what, that happened after we passed the zoning. So we're here today for the fence. I understand that argument that the fence is going down the middle of the road, but we can't rule on that tonight.
Mr. Chair, I mean, the issue here is the appeal of the issuance of the fence permit, nothing more. The subject and the area and the relationship amongst the parties is not being appealed, or nor is it being litigated. Here, this is about the correct issuance of the fence permit. That is what the appellant is appealing, nothing more. So if the board finds that the permit was issued incorrectly or without proper finding, then you can rule on that. And that's really what the appeal is about.
Right. And I don't mean to shut anyone down. It's just, I'm not the smartest guy in the room. I've got to keep it, focused on what we have purview over. And I think it's the fence permit.
And clearly, the fence permit only gives the applicant the right to put the fence on their property. It doesn't give them a right to put up a fence close to their property, in approximation to the property, only on their property. Now, you brought up other issues that over time, the road might have shifted, and that's possible because I know habits of driving and all that stuff, but the Rondinos can only put a fence up based on their permit on their property. Can't put it on Mrs. Ames' property.
But when you give variance relief where you're allowing 15 feet of frontage where it requires 200 feet of frontage, and now we're going to put a fence right up on that 15-foot wide frontage? I mean, that,
No doubt if that had been brought up at the hearing, it would have been a whole different discussion. But tonight, we have two separate pieces. You gotta, it's like a picture, a Polaroid. We have two properties that are deeded separately. Does the applicant have the right to put up a fence? That's the question, and that's what we have to answer, not all the extenuating circumstances that surround it. So we have two, I understand what's in the transcript. I read the transcript several times. If they have the right to put up a fence on their property and the permit was issued correctly, that's what we're here to judge. Actually, Mr. Kane, did he issue it correctly? That's what we're here for tonight. Not whether the fence is right. I don't think the fence is right, but that's not, I can't vote on that. Does that make sense?
I understand that, and I don't fault Mr. Kane, because when he doesn't have the whole history, when he's issuing a fence permit, is it 6 feet tall? Does the ordinance allow a 6 feet tall fence? It does, and I don't dispute that the ordinance doesn't allow that. But when you come before this board and say, we won't build any other structures on this building, and a fence happens to be a structure in accordance with the ordinance, and then lo and behold, you don't get along with your neighbor, and by the way, I was talking about buildings, but we want to build up a fence now, so.
I mean, are you calling it a structure now because of the size and shape of it?
It's defined as a structure under the ordinance.
But you're okay with a fence. You said that you were okay with
Exactly, because my client's a reasonable person. I mean, a fence that runs along the boundary that is 2 posts that run horizontally that is see-through, it's like a horse fence. It's not this.
It's 3 feet.
But the absolute you're asking us to do, it's either a structure or it's not. So either that
but
fence
my client wouldn't have-
either that fence is a structure and it shouldn't be there. If you're asking me to rule that way.
No, that's not my point. Had that been the fence, my client wouldn't have been objecting. She wouldn't have objecting and raising her voice.
But I don't.
But she would have been within her rights to.
I don't believe Mr. Silva, when he came before us, was saying that he wouldn't put up other structures, that including fences, pergolas, arborvitaes, things.
That's another story.
I just, I understand the argument, but unfortunately, we've got to go back to the fence permit. Is the fence permit permissible? Was it issued correctly? Not whether a 6-foot fence is right or wrong. A 3-foot fence, we can't judge on that, because whether it's a 3-foot fence or a 6-foot fence, as long as it's approved within the zoning regs and a 6-foot fence is, then we have to vote that way. So I'm not sure we can go and argue about the road and the easement. That was all discussions that should have been in 2015.
If you had the land survey,
Recently.
the survey says this is your property, they're not allowed to put a fence on your property.
A portion of it will need to be moved,
They're not
correct?
allowed to put a fence on your
That's
property.
correct.
You call the building inspector and you say, look, they'll have to move the fence. It's that simple.
Mr. Miller said you've got a few different things going on with that, right?
Yeah.
It's how that was represented to you when you built the property, how you entered the property, when you bought that house, what your expectation was. This is all kinds of things you could argue in a different way.
Wasn't a survey done when this subdivision was approved? And that roadway wasn't addressed then?
Yes. And the fence permit was not issued without us providing
Yeah, but you're saying
an
about the
accurate
fence.
survey, and we're not going to put a fence on anybody else's property
Well,
except the
Mr.
one
Silva, who
needed.
built the driveway?
And already was
Exactly.
Pardon me?
Who built the driveway? Was it the
That driveway
Rodriguez?
was there for years.
Okay.
Excuse me, no,
And
what?
just to correct one thing, that driveway will not have a fence down the middle.
Oh, I'm not saying that, but there is a turnaround where it's cutting right across the turnaround. That's there, it's existing.
Yeah.
So,
It was not put in.
but it was there when the property was sold, it was there when it was divided, so if I were a reasonable person, I would say that turnaround goes with the house that it's next to. And yet on the drawings that we've gotten with the fence, it's going right across the turnaround. So you can see the conflict.
there's no question that there was a closing in this matter. There was a title search made. Ms. Abrams was represented by legal counsel at a closing, and all I can say is she got what we had to sell. Apart from whether or not there's a driveway that really is on the Rondina's property in part, or not hers. All I'm saying is, there's a building permit that was issued by the building department based on a survey and gives us the right to erect a 6-foot fence. And I can promise you, that 6-foot fence will not be placed on anybody's property except the Rondinas. Now, if someone takes issue with where the boundary is, that's a whole different dispute. You want to go to Superior Court? Fine, but that's not for this board.
I agree. Is that your closing argument?
That's it.
Mr. Hooks, can you wrap up your argument?
I have nothing further.
Thank you. Mr. McNally, would you have anything to add to our debate up here?
Only that you keep the idea on the subject of the appeal and remain focused on that, whether the issuance of the fence permit was made correctly, and that's really the issue that you're looking at today.
And we can't dispute the boundaries or anything, that's really the
That's
fence.
that's not within the
Right.
scope of this appeal.
We're just here to say, vote on whether the permit was issued properly.
Correct.
And under the zoning structure, what is the council's,
Well, I haven't looked up structure yet, but there is a distinct section within the zoning code that speaks specifically to fences. But Jack?
Can I add something here, please? A couple of things. The building code specifically exempts fences from building permits.
Thank you.
So the town of Middletown adopted an ordinance because of situations like this to require a fence permit. So it's primarily a zoning issue. But I would say that the term in the zoning ordinance that says structure, it uses the word ornamental.
Right.
However, if that particular section of the ordinance was going to apply to a fence, then I would have to establish the fence as some sort of accessory or other structure that is now subject to setbacks. Because we don't have anything that says a fence goes up to the property line or where it's located on the lot, okay? So this fence permit was issued based on what we always ask for. Proved to us by some means where the boundary markers that we can go out and visually check and measure to, or a survey plan. Give me one of those two things, you'll get a permit to construct a fence, provided you don't go over the property line. The height limit in the zoning ordinance is 6 feet. So that's the criteria by which this permit was issued. I did recall Mr. Silva's testimony at the time that the subdivision was made, and under no circumstances did I construe what he said to mean fences. I think it said somewhere in there that there won't be any visible changes to the property. That's an impossibility.
Right.
So I don't think that the fence was ever intended to be in the context of which he used the word structure. And so the fence permit was issued the same way we would issue any other fence permit.
Are the Rondinas here? Can I just ask you one question?
We gotta swear him in. Come on up, Mr. Rondina. Can you raise your right hand? Do you swear the testimony this evening will be the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
State your name and address for the record.
Philip Rondina, 379 Third Beach Road.
Sandra Rondina, 379 Third Beach
Do you
Road.
swear the testimony tonight will be the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. Go ahead, Chris.
Now, I know our job is to ask questions that we're supposed to ask as members and not get into personal things. But it's amazing how many times neighbors don't get along, and I'll be going home tonight, pouring a nice glass of scotch for myself. But the question I have to you is, was it always your intention to put up a fence? It's just a yes or no question. I don't need any explanation.
No.
Okay.
The reason that the fence, we decided to put the fence up is
It's actually for protection.
well, Ms. Abrams has started a business out of those cottages now. She's rarely ever there, and they rent 1 or 2 days at a time,
No.
weekends.
We don't need to hear.
I just want to be yes or no.
That's why we did it, that's for that.
We understand.
I wanted to know what your intent was. That helped me to understand the intent, what the flavor of what you were saying was at the time.
It's protection and privacy.
Okay, that's all we needed.
At this point.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kane, Mr. McNally, we just do a simple vote, right? There's no motion, there's no
Right, I
second.
mean, what you're doing, you know, under 901 is you are going to make a decision on the determination of the thing that is appealed, and that's the fence permit.
Right, whether Mr. Kane properly executed the fence permit.
Correct.
And I don't need a motion for that? Or do
Well, you're going to take a vote, so yes, we'll still follow.
Yes, can I have a
regular rules of
motion
order.
to,
I motion that the actions that the building inspector, Mr. Kane, took were appropriate and within the guidelines of the zoning.
do I have a second?
Second.
Pursues a second.
I don't find any evidence to vote any other way, but to say that Mr. Kane acted within the ordinance.
Yeah, I don't think we need a lot of discussion. I think our mission here was to look at the permit, was it issued correctly? Does the applicant have the right to put a fence up? Everything else needs to be handled in another venue. So I'm going to support Mr. Kane and approve the issue of the permit. Anyone else care to chime in?
Mr. Miller, what was the motion? Can we repeat the
Motion
motion?
was to affirm the permit, to approve the permit
Well,
as issued.
Well, we have, yes, please.
All right, whether Mr. Kane properly executed the fence permit. I don't need a motion for that, okay, his motion. I motion that the actions that the building inspector, Mr. Kane, took were appropriate and within the guidelines of the zoning.
All right.
My only point of order would be, somewhere after the board makes a decision, you have to have a motion to either approve
Yeah.
or deny the appeal.
Okay.
Yeah, Robert, I appreciate that.
Then let's-
That's exactly, the motion should be relative to
Motion
the appeal.
Deny the appeal.
Second.
Motion made and second. I'm just going to go to a vote. All those in favor? To deny?
Aye.
Denied the appeal 5-0.
And the original motion?
It's gone. Right, we struck
You
the
would-
original.
Olin, you made the original motion,
Yes.
right? And then you amended your motion as the
Yes.
same mover.
Yes.
So that's fine, yeah, we're good.
And the same second.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's it.
Mr. Kane, do you want to try one more?
It's not 9 o'clock yet. Practice of the board is to keep going.
No, we're going to keep going.
All right, ready?
Let's give Mr. Leon Pentaleo.
Petition of Leon Pantaleos for a variance of section 725 to allow an extension of the existing solar photovoltaic array with a setback of 20 feet, where 25 feet is required. Ted Real Estate is located at 560 Queen Avenue, further identified as lot 115, tax assessor's plat 114. And also the petition of Leon Pantaleos for a special use permit from section 602, 725 in Article 11 to allow the accessory ground-mounted solar photovoltaic system in Zone 1 of a watershed protection district. Said real estate is located at 560 Quinnick Avenue, further identified as Lot 115 on tax assessor's plat 114.
Raise your right hand. Do you swear the testimony of this evening will be the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
State your name and address for the record.
Leon Pantaleos, 560 Aquidneck Avenue.
Tell us about your petition, Mr. Pantaleos.
Basically, just to extend an existing solar array and, to get a variance of 5 feet. When I originally put the existing solar array up, it was a 20-foot setback, and now it went to 25. So I would like the array to line up in a linear fashion. No, that's pretty much it. Every other setback is met.
And how big is your current array now?
Current array is about 110 feet.
And how much of your use does it generate?
Currently, with the improvements I made, probably about 35 to 40%.
So this is just to increase,
Yes, this is to get me to 100% of my power usage.
okay. And who's with you tonight?
This is Ed Detroyer?
Yeah, Detroit.
Detroyer.
Can I swear you in?
Yeah, sure.
Raise your right hand. Do you swear the testimony this evening will be the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Can you say your name and address?
Edmund Detroit, 32 Corsage Drive, Cranston, Rhode Island. Detroit, D-I, capital T-R-O-I-A. 32 Corsage Drive, Kearsarge Drive, Cranston.
And you must be the installer?
That is correct.
And I guess I just want to hear testimony that it's going to be 100%, not 150, not 160% of his need.
Yeah, actually, it's right. It's designed. It's not a perfect science. It's
No.
designed to meet 100% of his load.
Perfect.
It's like, again, it's not a perfect science. Get a lot of wet seasons, you could be 90. Get a real good year, you could be 110. It's not a perfect science, but it is engineered.
Visually, it's going to look exactly like the existing?
It's just a continuation, correct?
So there won't be any height change?
That's exactly what we're striving for, correct?
Okay.
Just one long just one long straight line.
Is this that stone house up with it set?
It's set back.
Yeah.
Okay. Are there any existing live pictures? Not just photographs? What it looks like right now?
No, I believe I sent some with the package, but I might have a few more in here.
You can't even see it from the road.
You can't see it, no neighbors can't see it, no one can see it.
No, it's,
There is a, white stock, not to get back on the fence issues, but there is a white fence over there hiding this structure.
yeah, I had to look to find it.
No one looks at this except you.
Yeah.
Actually, my neighbor does. He was here tonight. He was okay with it.
Picture that is, he has that down there.
Any questions for the applicant or is
Actually, I do.
installer? I think we're good, Mr. Cantalone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak for or against the petition? Seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing. We need to take up the variance first,
Yes.
right?
Yeah, variance, then special use.
Yeah.
Make a
It's
motion
getting
to
late.
approve the variance.
I second the motion.
Discussion?
The relief that the applicants look for is minimal, and it's, again, as you pointed out in the opening comments and the discussion, it's to improve the solar panels that he currently has up, their output for his home, and as testified by an expert, it's gonna meet that requirement, so I'm fully in support of it.
I too am going to support it. I think it's the least relief necessary. I think the zoning change is really what caused his inconvenience. Other than that, he would have been in compliance. So I too am going to support it. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0.
Good luck.
Nope, we got
Nope,
one more to
hang
go.
on, special
Special
use.
use permit. Can I have a motion?
Motion to approve the special use permit.
Alderman Gambro first.
Mr. Chairman, you may want to incorporate any conditions that may have been made by the Conservation
We will.
Commission and Planning Board. In the motion.
Motion to approve the special use permit with any and all recommendations from the Conservation Commission.
I second.
Motion made and second. Discussion?
Again, in terms of the area, he's only asked for minimal relief from that zone 1 that they were talking about. So again, I think that it's gonna be minimal impact, and it's gonna be for a good reason. I'm gonna support.
I agree with my colleagues.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. Mr. King?
You're the chairman.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, if I might be so rude as to suggest to you that this is the second time that Dr. Hogan's matter was
If you
was
give
before
me
us.
2 seconds to fill this out, we'll get going, okay?
Okay.
You're
I'll
jumping the
finish
gun.
before 9 o'clock.
You're jumping the gun. I don't think you want to make that bet, Mr. Silva. Read the petition, please.
Petition of B&L Hogan Associates LLC by their attorney Robert Taylor for a variance from sections 1301A, 1301B, and 1301F to allow the installation of 5 gravel parking spaces with no aisle separating the new spaces from the currently existing parking spaces. Said gravel parking area having setbacks of 7.6 feet from West Main Road, 7.3 feet from Dudley Avenue, where 10 feet is required, and such further relief from the zoning ordinance as may be necessitated by the proposed plans attached here too. Said real estate is located at 65 West Main Road and further identified as Lot 103 on Tax Assessor Plat 108.
May I proceed?
You may.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Robert Silva from the law firm of Silva, Thomas, Martland, and Offenberg, and I am representing Dr. Brian Hogan, whose corporate existence is B&L Hogan Associates LLC. He owns the premises at 65 West Main Road. You probably know where that is. That's his dental office. Years ago, we came before the zoning board and the planning board, and we combined 2 lots, moved the house, and we built his professional office. At that time, he only had an associate with him. Since then, he has 2 associates, and he's experienced some issues with having sufficient parking on the lot that was granted by the zoning board years ago. So he is hoping to get through the technical regulatory requirements of parking to be able to add 5 more spaces. Now, Todd Chaplin is a certified engineer, and he's qualified to speak to this more so than I am, but I'd ask the board to accept it as an expert. You have plans that Todd prepared, and essentially, if you go out there right now, you'll see there's an open swale on the other side, closest to West Main Road, from the existing 5 spaces that are there. What Todd has designed for Dr. Hogan is to get rid of the open swale, put in an underground system that will do the same thing, if not better, than what the swale is doing now, and place 5 spaces on top of that particular new design. Now, when you do that, you have 5 spaces here and 5 spaces right next to it. The new spaces will be exclusively used by staff, so they're not going to be coming in and out, in and out. The other spaces will be used by Dr. Hogan's clients. And what prompted him to come back to add 5 spaces is many times his clients end up having to park across West Main Road, cross West Main Road, or even still next door in the hotel where they don't have a right to park, and then come over. So he was hoping to put in 5 more spaces. He'd like to put in more than that, but physically, from an engineering perspective, Todd was only able to find that area above the detention pond, so to speak, and put a new system plus gravel on top. I don't mean to rush in my description, but I would like to have Todd answer any questions you have and correct any of my misstatements that I might have made just now, if any.
You can approach the mic and raise your right hand. Do you state the testimony tonight with the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Can you state your name and address for the record?
Todd Chaplin, Mount Hope Engineering, Swansea, Massachusetts.
You're qualified to appear before Rhode Island boards and commissions.
I am.
And you appeared before this board and commission originally when Dr. Hogan got his relief, is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Who approves the new system?
The original system was approved by Rhode Island DOT.
Right.
It's a small retention basin that was created at that time, and then continues on into the drainage system on West Main Road. We're actually not really altering that system whatsoever, and we don't believe DOT needs to be contacted in this situation, that we're not altering the existing retention basin, other than, right now, it's a stone basin, approximately 40 by 20 feet deep, 20 feet long. We're going to essentially square that off and put concrete flow diffusers, which are commonly used for subsurface leaching fields or for drainage, subsurface drainage structures. We're going to set those within the stone basin itself, fill the voids between some of those structures with stone, and then put 4 inches of pea stone on the top of that to essentially create a gravel parking space, as Mr. Silva said, that would be locked for employees only behind the existing spaces that are there. So the volume of the retention basin will continue to be essentially the same. We're not creating any new impervious surfaces to increase any rates of runoff. So essentially it will function similar to what is going on there today.
Mr. Kane, does the town have to approve the new system?
It'll have to be reviewed and approved by the town engineer.
Yeah,
Okay.
that'll be done. And you can make that as a condition.
How are these gonna be marked?
Pardon me?
How are these gonna be marked to, like is it, like regular three-quarter gravel?
It'll be like a gravel top.
I'm thinking of a woman getting out of a car with high heels and tripping, falling, getting hurt.
It'll be hard-packed gravel and accessible by pedestrian foot traffic.
So it's not marked just employees only or anything like?
No, it's employees only. That's where they're going to be.
So they'll
Yeah,
be marked?
it'll be marked.
It's my understanding that Dr. Hogan was going to have this marked with signage that says it is employees only.
Okay.
We have discussed alternatives to that finished surface, so to speak, whether it's pea stone, or he could actually set some pavers that have open joints. But again, the intent is to allow stormwater to go through the top of the thing. I understand what you're saying, that, you know, someone with high heels or something could be an issue, but I believe if it's employee parking only, most of the employees are not wearing high heels, so.
And the
Yeah, and
system
the-
is designed for the weight of the vehicles that's gonna be on.
Yeah, these flow diffusers are H20 loading and allowed to take vehicular traffic on top of them.
And the relief we're requesting is really technical, because if you look at the parking regulations, you're supposed to have so many feet aisleways between spaces and whatnot. But to do that, you wouldn't be able to put the extra
You
spaces.
were here before us to buy the lot next door just for parking.
Well, the lot next door is not for sale. We bought one lot.
No, that's the one I'm referring to.
Yeah. So it's not the most productive way of adding 5 spaces, but it is a very creative way, and I'll give Todd credit in that regard. So when you look at the literal application of the parking requirements to this particular lot and the use that's been put to by that lot for the last 10 to 12 years, not being able to have the other 5 spaces creates an inconvenience and a hardship of sorts, which is, I think, sufficient to meet a VD variance, which is, does it create more than a hardship? And I think it does. And there's some pedestrian safety issues in here that we're trying to address as well.
And speaking of that, I see a handicap ramp, and I see on the diagram a couple of oversized spaces, so I'm assuming that the number of spaces required for handicap is met already?
Yes.
And this addition would be not considered for any of that, it's just for, like you were just talking about,
Right.
overflow for the employees?
Yeah. And that's why we're here tonight.
Okay. Any other questions for the petitioner? Or thank you, Mr. Silva.
Thank you.
Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak for or against the petition? Seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing.
Mr. Chairman, just as a note, that they will be required to go before the planning board to get waivers for the landscape requirements, because the parking, the relief that they've requested is that they be closer than the required 10 feet to the property line,
So
in
we should
addition
put-
to the other issues.
We should put that
So
in.
it should be conditioned on them gaining those waivers from the planning board.
Perfectly acceptable. We're on the docket for the planning board's meeting on June the 12th. So
Okay.
making that a condition of your approval is absolutely appropriate.
Thank you.
Plus the town engineer.
And that the town engineer review and
Right.
approve the drainage.
Can I have a motion?
A motion to approve the petition forwarded to planning, and also after obtaining the town engineer's approval.
Second. Discussion?
I'm going to vote in favor of the petition, taking into consideration the safety and welfare of his patients. The added 5 spots would be a welcome in that particular instance.
Any other discussion? I'm going to support the petition. I believe that it's a reasonable request, as long as it passes the planning board and the town engineer. I think it's a worthwhile endeavor. Can I have a vote? All those in favor?
Aye.
Unfortunately for everyone left in the audience, it's 5 after 9. We usually go till 9 o'clock. So we will put you on for the next regular scheduled meeting.
Before you close the meeting.
25?
We're just doing a tent sale for the 4th of July fireworks.
I
This is a 5-minute.
I can't. I can't because I've got to go in order. I've got to go in order of what's here. And
Mr. Chairman, if the board wants to continue and go late, that's at your discretion. If you want to try to get these things cleaned up and calendars.
yeah, we either stay.
And the stenographer, she's willing to.
Yeah, we either stay for 5 or we stay for 1. I mean, if we stay for 1, we stay for all 5. And,
Well, that's
and we
the
won't.
thing.
And we won't finish by 10.
That's, we just put it out there. You'd have to hear all
No, I mean, I think we have to.
Can I just say that we were here today because we have a closing on the property coming in early June, and we needed to have this hearing in order to get the closing on the property done.
What is this, the land? What do you guys think about doing a special meeting?
Okay, Mr. Kane, do you think we could do a special hearing? Okay. Ms. Stenographer, what's your schedule like?
She stopped taking notes already.
Yeah, I don't think.
I know that
Yeah. Yeah, unfortunately, I don't think we're gonna get through. We either do a special meeting, or
the problem with that is all the other folks, we had one person already leave, who just whispered in my ear, they're gonna go to the continue to the 25th.
When tomorrow night,
If somebody wishes to request a special hearing, you guys would have to honor that request as an additional charge to do that.
Yeah.
To have a special hearing for one case. So,
Will the hearing be done before June 6th when the closings are? Or will we be having closings on the property?
we need to do
Our
2
next
weeks' notice,
meeting,
can't do it.
No, we need
We
to
would have to
notice.
provide 2 weeks' notice because we have to renotice in the newspaper 2 weeks before.
I mean, if we stay, we're gonna stay, we're here till midnight.
Unless we quit.
No lawyers in the room.
Yeah, there's no lawyers.
There's no lawyers in here.
There's
It
no
could be quick.
lawyers.
Could be quick.
Okay, I'll tell you what, let's,
How many cases are left? Who's staying here?
355 Third Beach Road.
okay,
I'll be right back.
okay, go to the back. Okay, is David and Mary Rodriguez here? Okay, wait, we've got one guy taking a brief. We're gonna try to be brief and go through it.
Very brief.
But I'm gonna call it. Who left, Jack?
Pardon?
Who left?
It was petition of Wayne and Adrian Domeyer. So that
They're
one, you
continued.
can continue that to June 25th.
Wait a minute. Unfortunately, fireworks man, you're last on the list.
I know.
So all these people are gonna be really happy. I
My
hope
wife-
you are
my
too.
wife's not.
Yeah,
Free fireworks for
Careful,
They're
gonna be free, you're not gonna be able to sell them.
I said,
How many-
stocks were, Jim's pocket.
Okay, so let's,
Going to Susan's house.
I'm gonna see.
They're still here.
There's three in the audience, so let's see if we can get through them.
Well, I gotta use them.
Go use it now.
Thank you. Is that all right with you, Mr.?
All you gotta do is keep fighting.
Yeah. Can I go with these guys? Okay, let's, come on up.
Yes.
Lawyers, man. Raise your right hand. Both of you, do you swear the testimony I do the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do. You gotta read it in.
Oh, yeah, hold on.
Yes.
I need somebody, will you read it in, Mr. Heaney?
Petition of David and Mary Rodriguez, owners, is that the right one?
We're Jack and Diane Lopes.
And Jack and Diane Lopez, applicant, for the variance from section 603 and 701 to allow the construction of a 44-foot by 50-foot, one-story, single-family dwelling and attached garage with a front setback on Cordero Terrace of 19.5, where 19.5 feet, where 40 feet is required, and an easterly side setback of 18.3 feet, where 30 feet is required. Said real estate is located on 355 Third Beach Road and further identified as Lot 62 on Tax Assessor's Plat 126.
State your name and address for the record.
Jack Lopes and Diane Lopes, 186 Ridge Street, Millis, Millis, Massachusetts.
Tell us about your petition.
So we're in front of you today to get a zoning relief on a land that we're looking to purchase. This property had previously been in front of you and had been approved by, for David and Mary Rodriguez when they were planning on building it a few years ago. They've decided not to build. The lot is back up for sale and we're trying to purchase that. We don't want to build the house that they were building. We're looking just to build a single-story level. They had required some setback variances of 20 feet on one side, and then I believe the height restriction, a height of over 35 feet, which was granted. We're going to be below the 35 feet. We're going to meet that 20-foot setback. They had already been approved, but on the other lot, we're looking for relief also to 20 feet. Even though the petition says 19.5 feet and 18.3, that's with the overhangs of the roof line. The actual foundation footprint will be 20 feet on one side and 21 feet on the other side, going all the way up to 26 feet due to the angled size of the lot.
And this is an R60 lot, correct?
That is correct.
And it's only 20,000 square feet. Two front yard setbacks? Yes.
It's on a corner, correct.
It's a corner lot.
And for the record, this board granted relief to allow the creation of that lot.
I remember.
With much less than required square footage.
Not to rush you, but I think it's pretty straightforward. Any questions for the applicant? Yeah, I know. Yeah. No. So we're going to open it up to your neighbors to have them.
Oh, sure. Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak for or against? Come on up. Okay.
Hello.
Raise your right hand. Swear the testimony tonight will be the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
State your name and addresses for the address, for the record.
Steve McQuaid, 369 Third Beach Road.
Marianne McQuaid, 369 Third Beach Road.
Okay. Tell us about.
Go ahead, Steve, you go.
All right. Basically, I have nothing against, I don't know these people, you know, I was going to say the Rogers, but you're representing them.
Speak right into that mic, please. There you go.
I have no position, I'm somebody building on their property, I'm all for it. My only thing is we're on the easterly side of them. Our house is 26 by 32. And we would just like to keep our property value and our privacy.
And we feel, we feel like it's too close to
To our house.
To our house, actually.
We don't want it to be like a Tuckerman's. We have a house on the other side of us. We had a neighbor forever. He died and his son kept it. Now it's sold. And starting last week, it's weekly rentals, daily rentals, 5 months of the year. I'm not saying they're gonna do that, but I'm grateful for the zoning that we have on that side because it is space. I don't complain to anybody. I've never said a word the last 3 years with that, but I'm happy to have that space. And that's basically what this is about, that's all.
So we're just concerned that the house that they build is going to be too close to our house. So,
I mean, we have a small lot. Their lot's pretty small, too.
we have a, yeah, but we have a very small house, and the house that they're proposing is twice the size
Is ours.
of our house. We have a small cape. Right next door, Third Beach Road.
Can you idea what your setback is? It looks like they're going to be 24.7 feet from your lot line.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know how far your house is from that lot line?
Big
What's the footprint of your house?
Not much.
Our house is 26 by 32. It's just a small cape.
How close your house from the property
The lot
line?
line. I don't know. The Rondines, I know they were here earlier, but everybody surveyed those lots around there. I'm really not sure. It's probably, if I guessed, I would say like 30 feet. 26 by 32 is the house.
30 feet.
Probably 30 feet. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
You guys have this
Right here.
Yeah, I can't, doesn't show their dwelling.
No, it doesn't show.
No. Yes, it does. It's right here, McQuaid. See it?
No, it says their
That's
name, it
septic.
doesn't show where their house is.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
That's just the owner of the
Yeah,
lot.
yeah, okay.
So you think you're about 20 feet from the property line?
I'd say 30 feet, yeah. 20 to 25, 30 feet.
So if he's 20, then you got 50 feet between the, almost 50 feet between your house and their house. Is that
No,
correct?
no.
He's going to be 20 feet from the property line.
He's going to be 18 feet from our...
18 feet.
Where 30 is required.
18.3.
18.3,
Where 30 is required.
yeah.
But you understand.
There's a reason
that-
why 30 is required.
You understand the reason for the relief, right? Because you two are in an R60 lot.
Correct.
Which means the setbacks were set up for a much larger piece of property. And so the reason why we have zoning is to address things like that. So we understand
Yeah.
your point.
I mean, we have 125 feet frontage on our lot, and theirs
That's
is
long.
97 feet. They're a lot smaller than us. It's going to be the house is going to be twice as big.
So they're good.
Yeah, but they're probably 30 feet there.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
That's their house. That's the lot.
Mike, could I just add something?
Yep.
That the property that we're trying to build is our future home, where I'm looking to retire within a couple of years, and it's going to be our full-time place. It's not for rental. That's where we're planning on living and staying, our retirement years.
We all die sometime. I would have retired.
Jim, can you voice your thoughts out loud? I'm looking at this,
The concern is that there's two front yard setback spaces.
That's right. Yeah, we're just trying to address, you know, how many square feet is the house going to be?
So the house itself, the living space, it's just shy of 50.
No, the footprint, I don't,
Yeah, the footprint, including the garage, is about 1,900 square feet, including the two-car garage.
so you're like at 10% lot coverage.
Yes. Yeah, very small area.
Okay, that's what I need. Yeah, they've only got 10% lot coverage. Alternates, feel free to contribute. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant before I close the public hearing? Any other questions for the applicant?
Yeah, I have one other question. What's the math on the back of that house they want to build? They've got 18.3 on one side, 19.8 on the other. What's the width of the house in between those 2 points? Do we have that measurement? I'm trying to figure out if they did go with a 30-foot setback, what that would leave them for a width for a house.
The frontage along the road is just over 100. And if you look at that.
It tapers.
Yeah, that's wider.
Yeah.
Right,
That's wider, so this is less than 100 between those 2 points.
but that's all we know.
Yeah, yeah.
At the shallow end there, where it narrows, it's right around 80 feet, a little bit less than 80 feet wide at that point,
80 to 90.
80 feet.
The back of your house, or the back of the proposed
The
house?
property, where the property makes that angle,
That
the
looks
narrowest piece
Yeah.
there is
This.
about 80 feet.
And the width of the house?
The width of the house, it's going to be 44 feet.
To push the house back.
But as the house is going to be up higher than where that 80-foot mark is. So that's why we have about 21 feet and 20 feet on one side. So to the neighbors, at the very back end of the house, we are about, the back end of the house to the property line for the neighbors, it's 21 feet. The front of the house is 26 feet to the property line.
The width of the house is 44 feet?
Correct.
And how about the length?
The length is 50, including the garage, the two-car garage, it's 50 feet.
50 feet?
Yes, down the long way, the long path of the property.
That's a big footprint.
It's only one story, that's why we didn't want to go.
I know, I'm just trying to, how big the footprint is.
If the width of the driveway is 30
Are
feet.
Robert and Sheila Sullivan here, the neighbors across the street?
That house is gonna be 60 feet wide.
No, but there's nothing.
I'm just trying to figure out if there's any way to move the footprint of this house closer to Cordero Terrace so that there's a bigger setback in between the McQuaid's property.
We could shift that house 5 feet over if needed.
So 50, see what I'm saying?
The Cordero,
Give them 30 feet at the corner. It'd still be narrow at the back, but
30 feet in front, and
Yeah.
that would be 23.
And this house is right here.
yeah, you've got a very unique shaped lot.
yeah.
Mr. Kane, are we allowed to do that? Ask them.
Well, what you're gonna do is reduce the setback request now on that side on Cordero Terrace to push it that way.
Right.
I don't know that you can do that.
Right, that's,
If you were to go further back on the lot away from Third Beach Road, would that have the same effect?
Right, because the lot narrows as we go back.
it would
Right, so
actually
that's gonna
close it up.
actually- Yeah.
If they go back, it's gonna narrow the distance on the McQuaid side.
It would narrow the actual distance, but it may have less of an impact to the neighbor, potentially.
Would that affect you less if if it was pushed back on the property?
I don't understand, it's still in the same property line?
Yeah, the property line is on an angle. Where it sits, the front, right. Where does your house sit on the lot? Is it up forward, near Third Beach
It's
Road?
about 55 feet from Third Beach Road, the property line on the street, our house.
Okay, so it's even with where they're,
The setback is something like that.
I don't know whether that's gonna show us anything,
It'll show you their house, right?
but, okay. Yeah, so what we're saying is if they move it back, we can't move it towards the road because we're not allowed to do that. But we could ask them to shift it back on the property. Right now, it looks like their front line where it's even with yours, because they're gonna be 54.4 inches back from the thing. So if it goes back, it would lessen the impact. But it's still,
Scott, you gotta move
backyard.
We can't move it towards Cudero, we're gonna actually move it back on the property. So if your houses are here, just move it back like this.
Further away from Third Beach Road, deeper on their property.
You got 14 feet, you've got 54 in the front where 40 is required.
So you can
So
move
you
it up.
go closer to Third Beach Road.
Yeah, if you went
right?
closer to Third Beach, that would open up the setback
That would get the front setback right.
right to 30, and then you'd only be asking
40.
for, what's that?
40.
Oh, it's 40?
Front yard setback's 40, we're considering Cudero Terrace to be a side yard in this instance.
Okay.
So that's 20.
So
So
do
they can
you,
move it 14 feet forward.
do you already have plans drawn up for this house?
Sorry.
Not by an architect, just by my own hands.
So is there a reason why they couldn't build a skinnier, deeper house? And still give more setback, and still, you're not gonna affect the setback off of Cordero. And as you go back on the property, further away from Third Beach Road,
Well, it just
The-
makes the bedrooms long bedrooms.
Would you ever come in on Cordero? Did you toss that idea around? Coming in on
Yeah.
Cordero? Coming in on
Yeah,
Cordero?
we did just the type of house that we're looking, just the type of house that we're looking to build. Whether we come off of our driveway or off of the Cudero, I mean, I felt it was the same thing because I'm gonna have a U-turn in the driveway. So that's why I wanted to come off right off the Third Beach Road. The type of house is that, and the garage is on the property, closer to the property line, so it will be less noisy. It's not, it's just a garage there, there's nothing going on. The living area is more towards the Cudero Drive.
Okay.
can I ask one question of?
Sure.
I'm sorry, what were your names? McQuaid's? What's the footprint of your house currently? It's,
It's 26 by 32, whatever the.
right, so what I'm getting at is, and I don't know this, but is this house grossly larger than the other homes in the Cordero Third Beach corner of Middleton?
Our house,
Not your house, is their house, is the proposed house, the proposed structure, is it physically grossly larger than?
except for one house, and the rest is directly across from them, like the Sullivan's house is a small cave, and the house next to it is a small ranch, about the same.
Right, I mean, I ride my bike by there, and they all look kind of the small cottagey type homes.
Yes.
And this house is gonna be larger than those small cottagey type homes, correct? And that's just me, I don't have any figures, I don't have your house plans in front of me.
Right, it's just that we're trying to get it into a one-level living space instead of two levels.
Sure.
That's all it is.
Okay, and how many bedrooms is this?
Two,
Just two bedroom?
yes. It's only a 1,400 square foot house,
Okay.
living space.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for the applicant? Any other comments?
I got one more question. When did you identify this property?
About 2 to 3 months ago, I would say.
And then you hired an engineer right away and did this?
Then we started dealing with the real estate agents.
No, but I mean, did you play around with this house on this lot a little more than just placing it right where you did? I'm just curious.
I played around with it, tried to...
You did?
I did.
Did you ever have an engineer set up a building footprint for you and try to figure out how you might...
Well,
do
that design is by an engineer. He was actually here today, Mike Russell. He designed that.
We understand that you want to close, right? But why do you need to have this specific house in order to?
It's just the style of house that I like, one level, open space, and just 2 bedrooms. I mean, internally, it's just a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom house.
Right. I think we're trying to throw you a lifeline here and just say that, you know, you maybe you could still close on the lot and probably reconfigure this within setbacks, potentially. Have you seen that with that big chunk of land in the back? Is he allowed to enter from Cordero?
Well, I think his septic system design
Right,
calls
yeah.
for the rear of the lot is where the septic system goes, and then he's,
can't be that by a
right now, we're giving him the side yard setback dimension on Cordero Terrace to kind of relieve some of the setback burden. Otherwise, he'd be asking for additional relief.
Right.
The ordinance gives me the ability to determine if one of the fronts, when they're on a corner, can be deemed a side yard for setback purposes. So that in and of itself creates 10 foot more of relief on the opposite lot line, which is that side
Do
line.
you see anything else here? Are you allowed to comment?
I sat with Mr. Lopes and his wife and went through a couple of different options before they settled on this one. You know, it's a tight lot, and I will add one more time that this board allowed the creation of the lot to be used for single-family use. So it's up to you to determine whether or not what they're proposing now to put in it is suitable. You got a 10% lot coverage request. So it's not like they're trying to go to the maximum, which is 15% allowed in the district. The relief appears on its face to be the least relief necessary. I think I may have written that in a staff report.
It is in the staff report. Any other comments or questions for the applicant? Okay, I'm going to close the public hearing. Can I have a motion?
I make a motion to approve the petition for variance.
Second? Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Eric Curtin seconds. Discussion?
I got a problem with all these setbacks.
Well, I'll start. I think it's really due based on the unique characteristic of this lot. It's a corner lot, and because of the way that the lot is wider in the front and goes narrower to the rear, they have a real hard time of trying to turn the house and not end up having to ask for more relief than they already have to ask for. So I think based on the siding of it and based on what we've heard, this is probably the best siding of that particular house. And then based on the knowledge of the community, I think this variance that they're asking for is seeking the least relief necessary and fits the characteristic of the neighborhood there. So I'm going to support.
Any other comments?
At the end of the day, I'm going to support it as well. I think that the size of the house is in keeping with the other houses. While the footprint may be larger than yours, there are a lot of houses on Third Beach Road in the immediate area that have larger footprints, in my opinion. So I'm going to vote in favor.
I too am going to support the petition. I think the unique characteristic of the lot, you know, it's really curves around the road. It would be very hard to fit, you know, even a single-family home on that lot and meet all the setbacks of an R60 zone. So I too am going to support it.
I'm also going to support the application for the same reasons, the unique characteristic of the lot, the location of the septic. I'm playing with this here a little bit, and it's not a grossly overbuilt house for the neighborhood.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. We're cranking through that. Can we read the next petition? Eric? What? Petition of Constitution. Number 8.
Chris and Jill?
The petition of Konstantinos Masadas and Marco Minieri for a special use permit, section 602, to allow alcohol service for the restaurant food service operation. Said real estate is located at 36 Quinnick Ave, and further identified as lot 20A on tax assessor's plat 116. Sorry, I forgot your names.
No, you said his name really
Raise
well.
your right hand. Do you swear the testimony this evening will be the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
State your name and address for the record.
Marco Minieri, M-I-N-I-E-R-I, 5 Wedgwood Drive, Middletown.
And Allison Kimmel, 5 Wedgwood Drive, Middletown.
Okay, tell us about your petition.
So we are here seeking a liquor license for our market and cafe. We're married. We've worked together for 10 years in an Italian restaurant in town. We've opened 2 additional locations for those owners, and we decided that we wanted to try to do something on our own. So we have a lot of experience, not only in the restaurant industry, but managing a restaurant that serves alcohol for 10 years.
So my idea is open a small Italian mini market and pair and use the liquor license to pair some wine with my food in the end of the day. That's it.
And what are your hours of operation going to be?
I think the maximum going to like 9 o'clock in the night.
So this is just accessory to the food?
Yes, just to pair wine is. My idea is like give the opportunity the people to actually try my food with like a specific Italian wine.
If you've been to Italy and you've been to aperitivo time, what they do is when you go there, you buy a drink and they give you food with the drink. So the idea is to serve wine or beer or cocktail and also serve food to the people to try the stuff in our store. And it's a good marketing tool for us because
For
then,
free.
Yeah.
And also, speaking today with the owner of Beach Liquor, can be like a good relationship with between us and the liquor store. To actually, I make people try different wine, and he can sell the bottle, and I can sell the glass.
Mr. King, once we approve, they still have to go to the council to get.
Would still go to the council for the
Okay.
actual license.
Yeah, this is only step 1.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's just beer and wine or cocktails?
Well, I looking for a full license because sometimes there are like different like type of cocktail with new like liquors, but again, it's not going to be a bar. We have like a 15 seat inside. Doesn't going to be a restaurant. We sell like Italian food. We're going to import Italian stuff, and I'm going to make also Italian food. Right now we are at the farmers market, and so just the experience of something really different. I was the executive chef, and she was the executive chef too at Pasta Beach restaurant in Newport. And what I experienced over there is like understand the people is like the real Italian kitchen is not just it's not like the fettuccine alfredo. It's like something completely different. And I want just put together like the idea to have like some different wine. Probably I'm going to have like 2 wine, one red and one white.
Right.
1 week, and another week another different like wine. Just to pair wine and
So you're talking mostly lunch and dinner is what you'd be serving?
yes, but again,
But mostly
it's
towards
like
dinner time.
yeah.
So, but no earlier than that and no later?
No, it doesn't going
One
to
of the
be
reasons
like
that we wanted to open a store is to give ourselves more of a life, to be able to control our hours and
What's the
our
hours
time.
of your restaurant now?
Excuse me?
What's the hours of operation now?
We're not
But
open
we
yet.
aren't open yet. I just get approval from the health department today. The Pasta Beach before was the operation? No, the one.
I'm thinking, well, he's Italian. I can't wait to try this out.
Okay. Any other questions for the applicant? Thank you.
Is this the subway building?
No.
No.
That's
no,
where
no.
Mission's
Ria's
going.
Cafe.
Ria's
That is a
Cafe.
mission going.
Too many people.
Do you have adequate parking?
Yes. We have
I
6.
guess
I visited the property, there are 5 spaces designated for their use on the property. Ria's Cafe was there, they had 15 capacity total, so he's keeping within the same.
Okay. Unless anyone else has any questions, Mr. Silva?
No, I don't have any questions. I couldn't figure out where it was, that's what it was driving me crazy. Now you told me it's Ria's Cafe.
So Ria's Cafe, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you. We'll
Thank
open it.
Thank you for your time.
There's 2 people left in the audience. Does anyone here want to speak for or against it? Seeing none, we're going to close the public hearing. Can I have a motion?
Motion to approve the petition.
A second?
Second.
Discussion?
I'm going to vote in favor of the petition. It's a welcome down there, nice Italian restaurant.
I too am going to vote in favor of the petition, providing they get approval, from the town council.
Oh, yes.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Okay.
You're not supposed to record what you're saying.
As long as you write it down, it's fine.
Go ahead.
We want your inner monologue.
We're skipping. Yep, and we're going to
Matthews.
Okay. Petition of Chris and Jill Matthews for a special use permit from section 803 to allow the expansion of non-conforming dwelling by the addition of a habitable room area in the existing garage and an 8 by 34 one-story addition. Said real estate is located at 400 Paradise Ave and further identified as lot 26 and tax assessor plat 126.
Raise your right hand. You swear the testimony tonight will be the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
State your name and address for the record.
Chris Matthews, 400 Paradise Avenue, Middletown.
Mr. Matthews?
Matthews.
Tell us about your project.
So this is formerly a barn garage. I'm trying to expand it a bit. I have 4 children and a wife, and we've been in there for some time, but we're trying to expand the garage bays. My mom passed away last summer, and I always had arguments with her about converting the garage barn, and she said, not until I die, so I am doing that now. She was very stern about that. She liked using the garage bays. So I'm trying to turn the 2 garage bays into living space, and then also expand about 8 feet out into the yard to also expand this sort of kitchen area. Keeping the 2 bedrooms upstairs. It's about, I don't have my architect was here before, but since he charges by the hour and it looked like we weren't going to get on here, I sent him home. So I think it's a 900 square feet. It's not a very big barn. And so I just want to expand it and make it more habitable for my family. That's really all it is.
So this is totally separate from your existing dwelling, it's just some space?
It is.
you wanna-
It is. There is a house on the property that we rent out to the Naval War College. Been doing that since the 60s, actually, since I was a little kid. So with my mom passing away, I inherited the house. We actually live full-time in New York State. I have 2 children, bless you, 2 children in high school, and when they're done in 3 years, we'll be up here full-time. Just to be clear on that. I grew up here in the same house.
So you're gonna continue to rent the existing dwelling? is
Yeah,
the
the
plan,
right.
And then you're gonna
Live in the back.
use the barn for your space when you
Right,
come up?
right. And I just want to expand it. We've come up, for years, I see my mom, and, it's tight.
So you have 3 buildings on the lot?
Yeah,
3?
yep.
And so the 8 foot, it's only going to be one side that you're extending?
It's only one side I'm
And
extending.
it's only the first floor?
Yeah, it's only the first floor, yeah, exactly. I'm not expanding upstairs, I'm just leaving those 2 bedrooms, so.
Okay.
Is this altering the zoning to 2-family?
No, it's
It's a
actually
non-
a non-conforming, by having 2 dwelling units on the lot. I went out and inspected the property prior to the application being filed. It's clearly been 2 separate dwelling units for, I gotta say, 50 to 60 years at a minimum.
Yeah.
So the purpose of this is a simple special use permit.
Right, there's no variances required.
Right, no dimension.
Yeah, that's correct.
Any other questions for the applicant? Thank you.
And thank you for hanging in there so long, appreciate it.
Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak for or against the petition?
Is there anybody in the audience?
Seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing.
Thank you.
Can I have a motion?
Make a motion to approve.
Kurt first.
I second the motion.
Tom Heaney second. Discussion?
Based on what we just discussed as far as special use is concerned, I can see, again, in terms of the property itself, he's just making improvements. He's got plenty of space, and not asking for any variances there. So I would say that as far as it being detrimental, it wouldn't be detrimental to any of his neighbors, and would actually improve the area and conform with the comprehensive plan. So I'm going to support.
I too am going to support the plan. I think it meets the criteria for a special use permit. There's going to be no diminution of property values. I think it's a reasonable request. And since it's been a non-conforming use for 50 or 60 years, I see no reason why not to support it. Any other comment? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Matthews, for your patience. Okay, now it's two, we gotta close. Hold on.
You better bring some fireworks.
Thank you so much for staying.
Speak highly of us when you talk to other people.
Absolutely.
We may not agree with you, at least we're being flexible.
I've already explained this town is very workable.
Petition of ELE Trust and Keystone Novelty Distributors for a special use permit from 602 to allow the expansion of the existing convenience store gas station by the addition of a 20 by 40 tent for the sale of fireworks. That real estate is located at 726 Aquidneck Avenue and further identified as 809 Tax Assessor's Plat 114.
Raise your right hand. Do you swear the testimony tonight will be the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
State your name and address for the record.
Keith Lambert, 1455 Wallem Lake Road, Pasco, Rhode Island.
You get all that? Tell us about your petition.
Okay, so we're just looking to set up a tent. Actually, we scaled down the size of the tent to 20 by 20 to just make sure it fit within the boundary of the property. Our company already does an existing site at 741 West Main Road. We've been doing it for 6 years, where we just sell the Rhode Island legal fireworks. Everything is complied by with the fire marshal to make sure that the operation works. We also looked at the parking spaces there to make sure the required parking was met. It has 17 existing spaces. The building requires, the current operation requires 11 spaces plus 2 for the employees, so that's 13, which leaves 4 extra spaces for our operation. There's also some additional parking that would be on that side of, on the adjacent lot side between the tent and the storage unit. It does show this, it as a storage unit, but we're going to use a, like a U-Haul truck that'll be left over there. So we could just kind of back it up and pull it up to load in the product that night.
Like the container that you use out on West Main Road.
Yeah, I just think logistically it'll be easier, and we'll just, yeah, you know, dropping a container off on that kind of surface, it just would be a lot less.
You're gonna store fireworks that close to the gas pumps?
Well, yeah, there's a requirement, it has to meet a minimum distance. Our original plan, if you look at the plan, was to put the tent where the 2 car spaces are to the right, which I have a copy of here, but that was gonna take up some parking, but also we just feel for the flow of the parking lot that it would be better to put it off to the side in that other lot. But it will have the proper distance from the pumps that's needed.
If I may, the state fire marshal's office drafted a regulation to specifically deal with the sale of fireworks, and it's very specific about setbacks from structures, from the street, from gas pumps, et cetera, so they're gonna be required to adhere to that anyway.
Mr. King, will this be the same as our other petitions run? Once they.
Well, I think it's a this would be a seasonal permit.
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah, it's only gonna be for 11 days. It's an 11-day sale, it's not a, you know, ongoing thing.
You're the same outfit that rents from Canals?
From Canals, correct.
But my point is, if it's successful at that location, they want to come back, so they don't have to keep,
Yeah, it's the
we
same.
did something for Ken.
Mr. Alves, we
Right,
extended that.
Right, well, they were coming back annually.
Right.
And then they went back and said, you know what, it's working, it's not an inconvenience, so that you extended them, I believe, for 10 years.
Okay. And we can do that after
So if you put this
this
for
year.
5 years, I'll be cool.
Well, we're not gonna do that tonight, but if they go back next year.
You could choose whatever extended period of time you want to give it. If you want to give them a 1-year special use permit to see how it goes at that location, you have the right to do that. Or you can do it for any time you feel is necessary.
You've looked at it, and I'm sure the town's looked at it. Do they have an issue?
It would be a use permitted by right if it was not a convenience store with a gas station
Right.
component. It's essentially expanding the special use that's already on the property.
Okay.
If it was just a standalone 7-Eleven store and they wanted to get a tent permit to sell fireworks, if they met the parking requirement, they would get a permit by right.
Okay. Thank
It
you.
just happens to be that the location is a special use in the district.
So we can okay it with the speculation that if there's any problems with police and fire.
You gotta be careful with that. I think you
Yeah.
you can limit it time-wise. You
Right.
can put hours of operation on it.
Well,
You can put number of days, you can put number of years that you wanna allow it to go on. You can ask that it comes back for a review next year.
Well,
Subject to,
Yeah, I think
you know, a
That's what we
review.
did with the others.
It's an extremely busy intersection.
Yes.
So the concern would be that it generates additional traffic concerns with more vehicles than you would normally have entering and exiting that piece of property.
And what day are you gonna start your sales? What day are you gonna end?
The date it's supposed to start is the 25th of June, and it's going to end on the 6th of July.
And if you're as efficient as you are cleaning up the West Main Road property, I was shocked at how quickly you guys closed down.
It's in and out. I mean, we do 500 of these tent sales. We have it down to a science. We have a route manager that comes and restocks everything daily. So that every day, we take the trash out, we take everything out, and we restock the
And
site.
what are your hours of operation?
9 a.m. to 9 p.m. every day, and on the 3rd and 4th, we're open till 10.
Okay.
You have down here the 21st of June to the 7th of July. Yeah, that's not what you just stated.
Correct. When we do all of our leases and we do all of our applications, initially, we ask for the longest time that our tents are going to be open. And so in our footprint of 500 locations, we're going to have some that are going to open on the 21st and some are going to close on the 7th, but this particular site is not.
Okay.
So just to clarify, because we don't know until we get the tent company schedule, the ABF freight delivery schedule. We have to put it all together, and then, like, last week, they actually finalized the dates.
Okay. Any other questions for the applicant? Thank you.
And he's just looking for this 1 year right now, is what you're asking.
Yeah, I mean, whatever,
Yeah, I think that's,
1 year, and then after this year, there's no issues, and if we can get a great.
I think that's what we'll do this year and have you come back next year. And if it all goes well this year, then next year we'll entertain multiple.
Very reasonable, thank you. Appreciate your time.
Okay, anyone in the audience like to speak for or against the petition? Come on, Celeste. Seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing.
A motion to approve the petition.
Motion made.
Second.
Motion made and second.
That's for 1 year.
Discussion. I'm going to approve. I'm going to support the petition. I think this particular vendor has proven that they're a safe operator. I think as long as they meet the state fire marshal's requirements and Mr. Kane is happy with it, I see no reason why not to approve it.
So 1 year?
1 year. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
Good luck.
I need one last motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
Motion made and second. All those in favor?
9:53.
All those in favor? Motion carries
This is
5-0.
probably still at it.